It would be hard to top what Gene Stallings just said. It's one of the great events in the state of Texas, the UIL State High School Football Championship. And the first of 9 games over 3 days is the Class 1A Division I State Football Championship from Cowboy Stadium in Arlington, the Stamford Bulldogs against the Mason Punchers. Hello again, everybody. I'm Craig Way. Happy to have you with us here for the first of 9 state championship games here on Fox Sports Southwest. And, in fact, it's historic. It's the first time that 9 11-man state championship games have been contested on one weekend. I'm joined by Travis Stewart, managing editor of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. This is a bit of history and a great deal of excitement.
Exactly. When we talked to every coach and every player, Craig, they all said to a man, they weren't just excited to play in the title game, but to play here in this stadium. I mean, this is where Super Bowls have been played and will be played for a long time. For these kids to get this moment is really special.
Well, we'll take a look at the day. As we mentioned, this is game 1 of 3 today. Stamford and Mason, Class A Division I, the Class A Division II title to be contested this afternoon. Monday in Tenaha, and tonight Melissa and Hempstead in 2A Division I.
All very different styles of game, Craig. Mason, a very good defensive squad, maybe the best in all of 1A Division I, but Monday and Tenaha are probably the 2 fastest, and that's going to be a wide open game. Melissa and Hempstead somewhere in the middle.
As far as this game goes, take a look at the Stamford Bulldogs' run to the state championship round, and that included avenging an earlier loss to an outstanding team in Albany.
2 of them. They had Albany, and they also avenged a loss to Seymour, both in district play, and the offense, as you can see there, was a big reason why.
And head coach Wayne Hutchison has done a great job at turning things around in Stamford.
Yeah, all he's done is taken one of the most successful 2A, 1A programs ever and made them state relevant again. And a big part of the reason why is his son, Hagen Hutchinson, a dual-threat quarterback who's had a lot of speed this year. He's got great numbers. He's thrown for over 3,000 yards this year, but he's also run for more than 1,300. And when you put all of it together, he's got more than 60 total touchdowns. He's been a key cog in that offense.
The Mason Punchers have had a nice road punching their way to the state title round, also with a lot of defense leading the way for Mason as you look at their road to the state championship in Class A Division I. Defense really carrying the day.
Yeah, as we said, it's the best in all of 1A Division I. Look, they shut out Ganado, which had been the #1 ranked team in D1, and then they only allowed 7 to Shiner the next week. It's incredible.
Which is not to say the Punchers are without punch on offense. They have one of the most explosive running backs in all of high school football.
David Mora. Now, this is a program that's really built itself on the roots of its own community. His older brother, Ubaldo, was the program's all-time leading rusher until David took over. He had a lot of yards, a lot of carries last year. They scaled his workload back, and it's made for a better team this season.
Mason against Stamford, and the third member of our crew down on the sidelines. We send it to Neil Beasley.
Craig, thank you very much. Coach, this is an awful big place. You guys got the wow factor out of your eyes yet?
We hope so. All I can say is wow. This is a great atmosphere, awesome. I'm proud for our kids to have this opportunity. This is great.
All right, now if you have one key to this game that you guys have to do to win, what is it?
We have to wrap up and tackle. We cannot let Mason control the football today. Awesome. We have to have some touches offensively.
Awesome, thank you. Good luck today, Coach. All right, Craig, back up to you.
Thank you very much, Neil. And we are about ready to go. And Stamford will get the football first, kicking it off for the Mason Punchers will be Rio Schmidt. There you see Cade Burns, the head coach of Mason. A lot of family history with regard to the Burns family in Mason.
That's right. His dad, Melvin Burns, is the all-time winningest coach in program history, and he has 3 brothers, and all of them are coaches, too, at other programs.
Cade Burns also did an excellent job at Thorndale before leaving for this job. Jesse Ramos is back deep to receive it for the Stamford Bulldogs. And we're ready to go. Game number 1 of the state championship weekend right here on Fox, and we're underway. Line drive kick, and it'll bounce up in the air where it's picked up by James Washington. Excellent coverage by the puncher to bring Washington down at the 17-yard line.
Now, when you look at Stamford's offense, or field position isn't necessarily the most important thing because they can strike so quickly on explosive plays with Hutchinson to Jesse Ramos, who you're just saying was back to return the punt. You can look at Hutchinson here. He's very mobile, so he can move the pocket and escape, and he's got great autonomy at the line to make reads. That's what the offense is predicated on, is letting him react to the defense.
And he has great numbers. Austin Alvarado is behind him in the backfield. So the Bulldogs ready to go to work offensively from their own 17-yard line, beginning this Class A Division I State Football And on first down, it's to Alvarado. Big running room. Austin Alvarado, and he'll have a first down as he'll pick up 11 yards out to the 28-yard line as we take a look at our Ford starting lineups. That was Austin Alvarado. There's the offensive front. Mulestein, Gonzalez, Stanley, Sanchez, and Alanis across the front for the Bulldogs. And in the backfield, and the receivers, the man who just carried the ball, Alvarado, along with Jesse Ramos, who's quite dangerous, Dalton Mathis, Cole Wimberly, and James Washington. First down at 10, and this is Hutchinson himself keeping it. We'll see a lot of this today as he turns the corner and is run out of bounds by Jake Newsom.
Exactly. The first play you saw there was a great example of what you'll see all day with Stamford is a read. He handed it off to the running back on a zone read, kept it, he made the right play. That time was a design run.
Our Ford starting lineup for the Mason Punchers, the defensive front, Briggs Jones, Kyle Zavala, Zane Graves, and Corey Zavala. Elliott Bibb, Tanner Dutton, and Nicholas Navarrete at the linebackers. And in the secondary for the Punchers, Newsom, Winston Tripp, Chance Stockbridge. I'll tell you more about him. He's something else, and Andy Duarte. On second down and 4 after that 6-yard pickup by Hutchinson, to the air for the first time and swings it out to Ramos. Mason stringing out the play well as they bring him down for a yard loss back at the 33, and Elliott Bibb leading the charge, the sophomore strong side linebacker.
Well, if Stamford can't get those bubble and slip screens to work, that's going to be tough because Coach Hutchinson made a special point of saying, hey, we do a lot of those to stretch the defense out and then look for open space and open grass. So they're going to have to find a way to get that play a little more effective today.
Third down, and nearly 5 needed for the first. Hutchinson with some time to throw. And unable to hold on to it was Dalton Mathis. Was open. Don't know if he would have gotten to the mark because there were a couple of Mason Punchers ready to try to bring him down, but it's incomplete and it brings up fourth down.
I think that's a little bit of nerves right there, Craig. I mean, these kids have, none of these guys have played in a state championship game before. The enormity of the moment with this 50-yard TV screen above them and all these fans here sometimes takes a little bit of time to get the jitters out.
Hagan Hutchinson also, of course, doubles as the team's punter. Hutchinson lets fly with a big kick. Chance Stockbridge will let it bounce, and it'll be down right around the 26-yard line. Well, they'll mark it at the 27-yard line. Actually, they'll mark it to the 28, so it's a 39-yard punt. And Mason will go on the attack for Cade Burns' team, and that's senior quarterback Austin Tripp, who's posted effective numbers both on the ground and through the air this season.
Exactly. They don't ask him to throw very much. You can see just 67 passing attempts all year because this offense is predicated on running the ball. Cade Burns is a wing T coach by trade, but he inherited an I formation in this his first year as a Mason coach. He found a way to integrate those two. So they don't throw very much, but when they do, it hurts.
Jake Newsom, the wide receiver at the top of your screen. First down at 10 for the Punchers. And it's to David Mora. Mora, good running room, bashing off the left side, nearly 10 yards, close to a first down is the senior running back, David Mora, before he's brought down by none other than Hagan Hutchinson as we take a look at the Ford starting lineups for the Mason Punchers. Briggs Jones, Corey Zavala, Brody Taylor. We'll tell you more about him. Quite a story. Michael Williams, the right guard, and Dylan Hoffman, the right tackle. Backs and receivers, the man who just carried the football, David Mora, with Rio Schmidt, Chance Stockbridge, Kramer Watson, and Jake Newsom.
Both these offensive lines, sorry Craig, are really offensive lines without a bell cow. They're out without one guy that really dominates the other unit. They're both really cohesive 5-man units and a tight end in Mason's case that do a good job of blocking the entire length of the line of scrimmage.
Speaking of length, the length of the chain extended, and it's enough for a first down. So credit David Moore with a 10-yard carry. And Mason, 1 carry, 1 first down, and we just heard Coach Hutchinson talking about wrapping up on tackles. Cade Burns getting his guys ready to continue the drive.
Well, it's tough to do that with Mora, and part of the reason why we mentioned in the open him playing after his older brother Ubaldo, who's 7 years older. Well, he played growing up with Ubaldo and his older friends, so he was used to physical play at a young age.
First down and 10 from the 38 for Mason. They'll load up the backfield, the full house, and it's to Mora again. Big running room again up the middle for Mora, and a pickup of 8 yards to the 46-yard line. Brought down by Ty McLemore, the sophomore Stamford linebacker. Looking at a Ford starting lineup for the Stamford Bulldogs. Across the front, Jacob Mulestein, Keontae Smith, Jesse Sanchez, and Jerry Gonzalez. The linebackers for the Dogs, Daniel Medina, Nick Stanley, and the man who just made the tackle, Ty McLemore. And in the secondary for Stamford, defensive backs, Jesse Ramos, Austin Alvarado, Hagan Hutchinson, and Dalton Mathis. Second down and 2 Mora, his third consecutive carry and a third consecutive effective carry all the way down to the 45-yard line. Game of 9 more yards and another first down before Hutchinson can wrap him up.
Yeah, get used to seeing Mora a lot. Several times on key drives this season, they have turned to him on almost every snap. We're talking 13 plays, he's carried it 12 times, and you can see on every play so far, it's all power set, Craig. I mean, they're running 2 extra tight ends and linemen out in the direction in front of Mora and lead blocking every white jersey in sight.
Tough to be an official here in the early stages there. Here's a tumble. First down and 10. Number 45. This time around the corner. Big running room for Tripp. Austin Tripp inside the 20, lowering the shoulder, and Tripp all the way down inside the 15 to the 13-yard line. Austin Tripp rumbles for 32 yards.
You know what? That's where Mason can hurt you the most. You know what Mora brings to the table. You know what he offers. It's when they bring in Tripp as well and turn him into a running threat that it hurts. Watch the defense flow towards Mora. 3 white jerseys. There's only one trying to pick up Tripp. He's got so much open space, and then a great job with the blocking downfield. Coach said he's a cool cat, and that's what they like about him there is he never gets rattled, and he just makes big plays.
First down and 10 after that 32-yard run by Austin Tripp. Balls at the Stamford 13. Again, Mason will line up 3 in the backfield. To Mora with a couple of lead blockers. Mora on inside the 8 to the 7-yard line. A pickup of 6. Hagan Hutchinson on the tackle for Stamford.
You know, looking at this Stamford defense right now, in Class 1A, there's not a lot of big kids anyway, but Stamford's linebackers are slightly undersized for, I think, even the norm in 1A, and with all these big, heavy-set blockers coming out for Mason, it's going to be a long day. I expect we'll see some schematic changes as the day goes on to try and slow those runs down.
Second down and 4. Ball is down to the 7-yard line after the 6-yard carry. To Mora one more time. Room to the end zone and a touchdown. David Mora helps Mason strike first.
Remember last season, David Mora set the state record for single-season rushing attempts with 498. They've scaled him back to almost half that this year, but like I said, they still go to him when it counts. And even though they've cut back the carries, his touchdown numbers are still off the charts, Craig. He's got 49 touchdowns this season. He's still a very dangerous threat, even if they don't give him the ball quite as much.
Impressive opening drive for the Mason Punchers. Rio Schmidt on for the conversion. Out of Tripp's hold. And the kick is good. 72 yards and 7 plays. Mason is on the board first. David Mora. 7 yards to the end zone. The Texas 1A Division I State Championship is brought to you by State Farm. Visit texas.statefarm.com to score the ultimate VIP experience. By your local Texas Ford dealers, check out the F-150, the truck of Texas, at texasford.com. By Academy Sports and Outdoors, the right stuff, the low price, every day. And by DQ, for the best tasting treats, eats, and drinks in Texas, DQ just tastes better. Mason out for the 7-0 lead, their opening drive, and now the Punchers will kick off the second time here in this first quarter, including the opening kickoff as Rio Schmidt had a line drive kickoff the first time, and he'll have another one here. This one once more will be picked up by James Washington. A little more running room, but Mason quick to the coverage. Washington brought down near the 28-yard line. So second possession coming up for the Stamford Bulldogs.
And this is a great opportunity to get Jesse Ramos involved. You know, they had a short drive on their first possession, and drop pass was a big part of that. Mason defense was the other half of it. This is a great opportunity to get Ramos involved. They put 2 kickoffs on the ground now because they don't want the ball in Ramos's hands.
So from the Stamford 28, the Bulldogs back to work. Hagan Hutchinson and Austin Alvarado in the backfield with 4 wide receivers. Stamford spreads the field. And it's Hutchinson keeping himself a good running room. Hagan Hutchinson will pick up Stamford's first down on an 11-yard run up the middle before Winston Tripp can bring him down.
The Stamford offensive line gets a big thumbs up for that because Mason brought a guy late. They brought a linebacker right up the middle. The offensive line did a great job of picking it up. And then Hagan Hutchinson does what his dad said he does best. He reads situations so well. And I'm sure a lot of that, Craig, comes to the fact that he's a coach's son.
First and 10 from the 39. Hutchinson to the air, this time to Ramos. The receiver screen, and Ramos turns it into a big gainer. Picks up a big block from Washington, and Jesse Ramos will do the rest. 61 yards from Hagan Hutchinson to Jesse Ramos.
Both of those kids made a great play on that because Hutchinson originally went to hand off the ball. He saw the defense collapse on that side and said, well, I know Ramos is sitting back there behind two blockers. You can see right here in the middle of your slot. He's going to drop down, come back, pick up this pass. And then Ramos shows what makes him an all-state candidate, Craig. He's got speed and agility, and he picks up a heck of a block right there on the outside from the tight end, James Washington, and then he's gone.
Noah Contreras for the conversion, and it knuckles through for the extra points. Well, that's a 72-yard drive for Stamford to match the Mason 72-yard drive. And we have a 7-7 tie. 7-7 the score. Mason had its opening drive for a touchdown built on the ground. Travis Stewart, Stamford did it through the air and got one big play involved.
You're going to see 28 come in on the side of your screen here and lay a block that springs this for a touchdown. That's sophomore tight end James Washington, but they love his athleticism. He's also a backup safety. He can get out there and catch passes. He's one of the top pass catchers on the team. And like I said, Craig, he's only a sophomore. We're going to talk more about Stamford's bright future with all these young kids, but that guy may be at the forefront of it. He's special.
And so is Jesse Ramos with the touchdown catch. Now in a 7-7 tie. The kickoff to come from the man who just laid the block. James Washington also doubles his game. And we'll see that a lot at the Class A level. You'll see guys do 2 or 3 different things, also play on both sides of football.
Most of the teams that you're going to see today are going to do it, but especially these two. Stanford uses almost everybody on both sides of the ball. No one comes off the field.
Washington kickoff.
There he is again.
And Mora back deep to receive it. Trying to kick away from Mora, and this one a nice kick, but it will go out of bounds. It'll roll out. It was getting close to the goal line as it went over the head of Chance Stockbridge, but out of bounds on the kickoff try from Washington. So 7-7 the score, and Mason to go on the
kick
attack.
Out of bounds, 5-yard penalty, re-kick.
And this Dallas area chapter of officials indicating that Mason will have Stamford re-kick it as Kay Burns wants to give his return team another opportunity here.
Well, why not if you've got kids that can run? And I think what's important to note for Mason is even though Stamford got that score quickly, don't get caught up in playing in a shootout. That's not your style. You want to go back to what you did on your first possession. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. It's been a recipe for success not only last year, but this year as well. Go back to that and don't try and run wide open like Stamford does.
Washington will kick it off again. Moore is the deep man. And he's flanked by Andy Duarte and Chance Stockbridge. Here's the second kickoff for Washington. This one high, but not deep, and Stockbridge will run under at the 23-yard line. This is Chance Stockbridge across the 35-yard line. Mason will have good field position to start its second possession. That first was a 72-yard drive, as we mentioned, on the ground, ground-based. That's what the punchers do best.
That's what they do best. They load up on one side of the line and they blow you off the ball. And even though Mora had the better numbers and, of course, the touchdown run, let's not forget, it was quarterback Austin Tripp who broke that one down the right sideline and put them in great scoring position. It's really tough to get 3 yards every snap and end up scoring when you're 70, 80 yards away. If you can get a big play like that, it helps a lot.
Tripp had a 32-yard run on that opening drive. Overload the right side of the line of scrimmage with Mora receiving blockers in front of him as he receives the football, and Stanford pursuing quicker to the ball, and they limit Mora, if you will, to a 5-yard gain. Ty McLemore on the tackle.
Yeah, limit to a 5-yard gain.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where Mora lives. Coach Burns says, you know what? He's not all that fast. He's definitely not big, and Mora says it too. But he always gets positive yards because he follows his blockers and he falls forward. He's a very technically sound running back, despite not being physically imposing.
Second down and 5. Winston Tripp, receiver. Austin Tripp under center. Stockbridge is the wing back. Split back situation. Counter coming the other way. Mora again, and that'll be enough for the first down. As he'll pick up 7 more yards out to 47 before Hagan Hutchinson can bring him down. You know, you mentioned it. Travis, and talking about David Moore saying, I'm not the fastest guy in the world. In Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, he had a preseason profile of him where he says, I'm only about a 4.6, but he just quick to the spot.
Well, that's because he does what's even more important than rely on speed. He knows where he's supposed to go, and this offense does a good job of clearing pass for him. Watch on this play. If they run, you'll see a big hole for him. It's almost every snap.
1st and 10, Mason for the 47. Moore does receive the ball again, and this time held to a 3-yard carry right to midfield.
Stamford's adjusted. That's 2 plays in a row where they've managed to shake their blocks early and get in there into those gaps and slow Mora down.
As we introduce you to our Ford built-up player of the game, it's going to be that offensive front and the anchor of that front, center Brody Taylor.
Yeah, well, he's a great story along the Mason offensive line. They run the ball so much. We'll talk about him more in a second, but he's an incredible young kid.
2nd down and 7, the ball at midfield. And this time there was movement in the line, and a false start is going to cost Mason 5 yards. But in talking about Brody Taylor,
Offense, 5-yard penalty, still 2nd down.
Taylor, certainly one of the anchors of that offensive front, and as you can see, one full arm and part of the right arm, and it hasn't limited him at all.
Not a bit. He lost it early in an accident, early in his childhood, and Coach Burns said, if there's anything it does to him, it means he just can't be lazy. He can't just rely on his hands. If he's out of position, he always has to be in perfect position, and he is.
2nd down and 12 because of the 5-yard walk-off, and looking to throw is tripped. Outside, oh, what a catch made by Rio Schmidt. Take it across midfield and down to the 47-yard line. It's a nice grab, one-handed by Rio Schmidt, and that'll work for 8 yards and get a lot of the yardage back. Keontae Smith, the tackle for Stamford.
Let's talk about Rio for a minute. This is a kid who was their kicker last year. He actually moved from Midlothian earlier because he was playing soccer out there, but he was a kicker at the beginning of the year. He shows up to two-a-days, and there's fullback next to his name. So all of a sudden he gets a position added because the coaching staff wanted to utilize him more because of his athleticism. And you saw it there. That's a kicker and a fullback, folks, on a one-handed grab.
He adopted it well. Now it is 3rd down as Mason faces its first 3rd down situation. To Mora, and no trouble. Mora, a 1st down, a move of the chain. Well, it's close right at the marker, but it looks like from where the officials are coming up to spot the football, that David Mora picked up enough yardage for the 1st down. They may want to measure, but they'll say, no, it's enough.
Now, the weird thing about Mason is they rarely commit penalties because, Craig, they can't. I mean, when you run the ball that much, you can't take a 5-yard false start penalty like they did on that drive. If you get in 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 9, you're behind down in distance. It makes life really tough on a run-based team.
They're able to recover from being behind the chains there. And that false start call, and it's 1st and 10. The Stamford 43-yard line. Back to the ground, this time to Schmidt. Rio Schmidt hit hard after a gain of a couple. The 41, maybe near the 40-yard line, as Stamford came in to plug that hole, led by Jerry Gonzalez, the defensive tackle, and Jesse Sanchez, the nose tackle.
You know, it seems odd with how quickly and easily Mason scored on the first drive that now they would be struggling a little bit, but there's precedent for this. When they played Ganado several weeks ago in the playoffs, they scored on their first drive, made it 7-0, and neither team scored again. The game ended at 7-0.
Really leaned on their defense to beat the #1 team. Ganado Indians have been #1 from week 1. Zone read keeper this time by Tripp, but he's tripped up at the 37-yard line by Rudy Sanchez, a junior middle linebacker. And that's another thing that Wayne Hutchinson told us, Travis, that he's going to rotate his linebackers pretty regularly today.
Especially Rudy Sanchez and Nick Stanley, because they're the 2 middle linebacker guys, and Stanley's also the center. So they don't want him getting too gassed playing both sides of the ball. But they're the defensive captains because they make all the calls, the checks on the field. They don't huddle, so they get the call from the sideline, and then they make all the checks at the line.
3rd down and 4. Leave the 33-yard line. And Mora, again, the 1st down inside the 30 and down to the 28-yard line. So it'll be 1st down and 10. Another big run, Noe Contreras on the tackle for Stamford, but another move of the chains and another 1st down.
Now, the kid you're seeing here is Ty McLemore, number 23 for Stamford. He wasn't even really supposed to be considered a starter in this game, but they didn't fully lose Mario Gonzalez, who slowed with an injury, so McLemore now takes over at several spots for him.
Ball was at the 28-yard line. Mason moving the ball again, largely on the ground. One completed pass from Austin Tripp, and it's back to the ground to Mora. scuttling his way forward to the 23. Daniel Medina makes a tackle. Even when it looks like he stumbles forward and doesn't pick up much, he still gains 5 yards.
Read my mind, Craig, because what Mora did there is really special and rare for running backs. He could have tried to bounce it outside. A lot of kids would have done that. He saw the hole in the middle and took it, and that's where he got 5 yards. He's really something else, I tell you what.
Second down and 5 at the Stamford 23. Scott Mason lining up in an I set, but the result, the play call is still the same. Go to David Mora, and he has another first down. All the way down to the 11-yard line, a gain of 12 yards. Sanchez the tackle, but it's still the David Mora show here in the first quarter.
And did you see who was lead blocking for him after the toss? It was none other than Austin Tripp, number 2, right there in the middle of your screen in purple. Gets right out there. He doesn't get a great block. He's a quarterback. How much of a great block can he get? But he gets enough to spring Mora for about another almost 8 yards. That's crucial.
First and 10. Mason continuing the march here. Down at the Stamford 11-yard line. See how they've done it on the ground here in the first quarter, to the ground again, and here goes Mora once more inside the 5, and Mora within a yard or two of another first down. Hutchinson and Dalton Mathis the tackle for Stamford.
It's a very similar toss play on back-to-back calls now, and what they're doing is they went straight at Stamford early on, and now as you can see another toss. There's Tripp out there as the lead blocker again. They're stretching defenses out. They pound you early, then they're stretching you out, and I tell you what, Hagan Hutchinson finishes that play with the hammer. That's maybe quarterbacks can make blocks and tackles. That's a heck of a shot from Hagan.
If you're playing on both sides of the football, you better. Nevertheless, a gain of 9. Second down from the 2. Mora just shy of the goal line. It'll be first and goal for Mason. Mora doesn't pick up the touchdown, but he is just a foot shy as he takes it for a first down, as Rudy Sanchez on the tackle. And you see our first down line there, not official, but awful close to it. It'll be first and goal inside the 1.
Mora doesn't even look tired. He's probably got close to, 10 or 11 carries so far? He doesn't even look tired. That's just an Iron Man in the truest sense of the word.
First and goal, Mason inside the Stamford 1, and it's Austin Tripp straight ahead and across for the Mason Puncher touchdown.
Right behind the center, right behind the left guard. That's Michael Williams, Brody Taylor. They just bulldozed him. And the thing that's incredible about Brody, I mean, with one arm, he snaps the ball. He's still got time to get his hand up and push. Watch. Right down through the middle. Everyone there just lined up and blew the defense off the ball. That's an incredible, incredible player. 75, and then as you can see, the left guard gets the majority of it and just blows everyone right off the ball there. That's pretty impressive.
Rio Schmidt on for the conversion.
It's actually Corey Zavala, the guard there on the big push.
Tripp brings the snap down. It was high, but the kick hooks inside the upright, and it is good. So even when it's not perfect, it works. Nice job by Austin Tripp to get that high snap down. And Brody Taylor, a big part of why this Mason Puncher team is off to a good start. 2 possessions, 2 run-based touchdown drives.
Well, this just goes to show you that stats can't tell you everything about a football team. You just saw Brody Taylor with a great push in the middle. There's no stat for that. And then Austin Tripp, as you saw, got down the high snap on the extra point, and 2 very effective lead blocks on toss plays there close to the red zone. And those are things that just don't show up in a 13-play, 65-yard drive.
That takes 6:53 off the clock. This is exactly how Cade Burns wants this to go.
Precisely, because it keeps the Stamford offense on the sideline. Stamford, much like a Refugio team we're going to see tomorrow, Craig, they can't score if they don't have the ball. If they only get 5 or 6 possessions, even if things go perfectly, that's only 35 or 42 points.
So it's 14-7 here in the waning moments of the first quarter. And Wayne Hutchinson getting his Bulldogs geared up again to go back onto the field. But Mason has had a 72-yard touchdown drive and a 65-yard touchdown drive. And only the 1 pass on the right. And even that was effective to Rio Schmidt for a first down.
Because Schmidt made a great one-handed grab. Something that Coach Hutchinson talked a lot to us about was woodcutter's wisdom, which he preached to his team earlier in the year after 2 district losses. It's a long story, but essentially it says you can never make judgments too quickly. You have to wait and see how things play out. And I'm sure that's what he's telling his kids now is, look, they've scored on 2 straight drives. It's 14-7. We feel down. We're still very much alive in this game. Don't make up your mind too early on something. There's still a lot of time.
Schmidt preparing to kick it off for Mason. Ramos, the deep man. James Washington has returned the first 2 kicks because they have been squibbed down the middle. We'll see if Schmidt does that again here on this kickoff.
Well, they know they don't want to give it to Ramos. That's the guy they want to keep it away from the most. Like we said, before Stanford's first touchdown, it's a great opportunity to get Ramos involved. Bang, screenplay touchdown. They do not want that All-State kid, two-time All-State, to have the ball for any reason.
So Schmidt to line up his troops to kick it off. His third kickoff here, including the opening kickoff of this first quarter. Another line drive bouncer, and again, James Washington will feel it this time from the 23. Washington trying to kick his way through traffic, but he'll be brought down around the 30-yard line.
So at what point does Stamford decide maybe to go with another wide receiver back there and pull a couple of their up blockers? It's obviously a trade-off. You lose some of your bulk in the return game, but if you really feel like you have a speed advantage on special teams, is that something that you look at if you're Coach Hutchinson? He told us a lot, Craig, when we talked to him, that a lot of what they do is reactionary. They take what the defense/offense gives them, and they respond to that. Maybe that's a call they could make.
From the 30-yard line, it's Hagan Hutchinson, the head coach's son, in the shotgun, ready to take the snap. Austin Alvarado is his running back. And it's Hutchinson keeping himself, and he's brought down after only a gain of a yard. Excellent pursuit by Briggs Jones, the senior defensive end, just a 1-yard gain on the final play of the first quarter. Stamford is all about quick strikes. Mason is all about grinding it out, and so far the Grinders from the Hill Country have the lead. It's the Mason Punchers 14, the Stamford Bulldogs 7, into the first quarter in the Class 1A Division I State Football Championship from Cowboy Stadium.
It's fun. There's nothing like it. Texas football, everything's bigger in Texas, and football is definitely huge. Whenever you can have a sellout crowd at your high school stadium every time you play, that's a big thing. You know, going back and watching the games, obviously everybody's a lot smaller. And it looks like Pee Wee football, but you know, it's fun when you're in the moment, and you got to cherish that, because you never get to play with the guys you grew up with for all those years ever again.
Robert Griffin III, not only the Heisman Trophy winner, he was a pretty fair quarterback at Coppers Cove, where RG3 led them to a state finals appearance in Class 4A. Pass on second down to Jesse Ramos, and that'll pick up yardage for a first down. A gain of 11 yards and up to the 42-yard line. Craig Wade, Travis Stewart, Gil Beasley, and our Fox Sports Southwest crew with you from Cowboy Stadium in Arlington. Second quarter of the 1A Division I State Football Championship. It's the first of 9 games over 3 days here at Cowboy Stadium in Arlington. Mason with a 14-7 lead on Stamford. Hagan Hutchinson back to the ground. This time Alvarado gained up to the 45-yard line.
Stanford's picking up the pace slightly. You can tell. They're really starting to try to hustle to get to the line. They don't want this Mason defense to get set. And I think part of the reason why, Craig, is Stanford has not had success running the ball so far. They know they need that if they're going to make this offense as fully explosive as it can be. You can see it really going faster now.
Second down and 8 after the 2-yard gain by Alvarado. Hutchinson, a design keeper, and a big block. He'll take it, spin off, tackles, and Hagan Hutchinson has a first down. Takes it all the way down to the 42-yard line. Tanner Dutton, the junior middle linebacker, brought Hagan Hutchinson down, but not before Hagan picked up 13 yards.
That's a special quarterback right there. An honorable mention All-State kid this year, but honestly, I think he could have very easily been second or first team. And the Texas Sports Writers Association poll that comes out after the title games, I wouldn't be surprised if he was first or second team on that one.
First down and 10 from the Mason 42. Hutchinson with now sending Ramos in motion, and he'll hand him the football. The fly sweep, a flag goes down, and so too does Ramos. What a one-on-one play by Andy Duarte, the senior right corner. He dropped him for a 3-yard loss back to the 45. And a legal shift is the call against Stamford.
You saw what makes Mason's defense really special there, because that's where the Stamford offense actually had numbers. That's where they had the bulk on that far side where Ramos was tackled, and the Mason defense still managed to break it down and get into the backfield. And part of what makes them so special is when they get into the backfield, they're able to force balls out. They forced 7 fumbles against Shiner earlier in the postseason, and they've only allowed 8 points per game all season long. That's the best mark in all of Class 1A.
Richard Bonner, our referee of this Dallas-based chapter, will tell us, I think, if Mason will be content to decline this
Illegal
penalty.
shift by the offense. Penalty decline. Second down.
You'll take 2nd and 13 versus 1st and 15.
Absolutely, especially against Stamford. You don't want to give them another down because it only takes 1 down for them to score. Yeah, it's very, very well read right there.
2nd down and 13. Hutchinson up in the pocket and finds Ramos. Ramos, enough for the first down to the 31-yard line. Tanner Dutton brings him down, but it's tough to try to catch up to Jesse Ramos, who's now over 90 receptions for the season and over 1,800 receiving yards.
1,800 receiving yards is a ridiculous number, and part of the reason he's found him, as Coach Hutchinson told us, their offense is predicated, they look for grass. They look for open space, and that's where they go. Ramos gets there better than anybody in 1A right now.
Stamford on the move at the Mason 31. Hagen Hutchinson, the keeper. A gain of about 4 to the 27. Winston Tripp on the tackle for the Punchers.
It's actually Austin Alvarado, the running back, who got in there and picked up a block off the edge that freed up Hutchinson to even get that amount. And as we said, they have not had great success running the ball so far, but it looks like they may be starting to get a little momentum.
2nd down and 6 from the 27. Hutchinson, again with Alvarado blocking in front of him, but this time Hutchinson finds the going difficult, and it's Winston Tripp coming over along with Tanner Dutton to bring him down, but excellent pursuit by Winston Tripp.
Mason must be disguising some things, Craig, because part of what makes Hagen so difficult to game plan for is he reads defenses very well. But look, you're going to see number 7 come right off the edge. It's Winston Tripp. He was hiding there all along, waiting, covering his gap, and he was there to read it. It's been very difficult for Hagen to find the gap so far.
Pop of the pads there, and it's 3rd down and 6 for Stamford at the Mason 27. Hutchinson looking for Ramos and picked off. Intercepted by Austin Tripp. And Tripp across the 25 to the 27-yard line brings it right back to the line of scrimmage. Travis, I think Ramos did not have enough time to turn around and look for the football. Austin Tripp read it all the way and comes up with the interception.
I think it came sooner than Ramos was expecting. Watch 20, watch his head. It's not there yet, not there yet. And then he turns around and then he realizes it's already up and to him. Now that may seem odd, quarterback Austin Tripp picking off the pass on the defensive side of the ball, but remember we said a lot of kids play both ways, and he picked off the pass last week too.
And it took the quarterback to tackle the quarterback. Well, the Mason Punchers have had the football 2 times, and they've scored 2 touchdowns. And now after Austin Tripp intercepts Hagen Hutchinson, it'll be the 3rd possession for the Punchers. And now some of the onus turns to the Stamford defense to put the clamps on the Puncher attack.
You don't want to be down 21-7 against Mason. Really don't want that.
From the 27. This is on the carry, Rio Schmidt. Good running room on 1st down for Rio Schmidt. We've been so used to seeing what David Moore has done in the first half, but now it's Schmidt's turn, and he quickly picks up 7 yards.
You know what? Coach Burns at Mason told us early on that you can try and call this a wing T, or you can try and call this an I, but realistically, we're more of a 2 and 3 back set. That's the best way to describe it. You saw a lot of Mora. Now you're seeing Rio Schmidt. They always have 2 guys that they can give it to. Doesn't have to be one formation or the other.
Schmidt, the fullback. Moore, the tailback, and some movement in the line now on 2nd down. And 3 will be the 2nd false start call this first half against Mason.
Yeah, I think they got confused with the snap count.
5-yard penalty. Still second down.
So return 2nd and 3 in the 2nd down and 8. And this is much more what Stamford wants, is to put Mason in 2nd and long and 3rd and long, since it's a ground-based attack.
I feel like they can attack a little more in this situation. And that seems like the obvious thing to say in 2nd and 8. But against a run team like Mason, you always have to be ready for it. But I feel like Stamford can get after it a little more in these situations.
2nd down and 8 for Mason from the Puncher 29. Toss back to Mora. And Mora quickly earns back 7 yards. Back to the 35-yard line, so it's a makeable 3rd down situation. It'll be 3rd down and 2 coming up. Austin Alvarado, the strong safety, on the tackle for Stamford.
Stamford did attack on that. You saw 34, Rudy Sanchez, the linebacker, shoot right through the middle, but the run went the other way. And, when you're playing a run team like this with so many blockers, sometimes you send the extra guy and just hope you have it read right.
3rd down and 2 for Mason. Mora, the call, and he has the first down. Picked up big blocks in front, and that's been the story of these first half drives for Mason. The play of the offensive line. This time a 3-yard carry and enough to move the chains.
And now they're back to Mora again. Take a look at the offensive line here and how powerful the push is on the left side. Almost every defender's on skates about 2 yards back from where they started. When you give Mora 2 yards to start with, he's going to get you 4. And 4 times 3 is 12. That's a first down every time.
It's at the 38-yard line. Austin Tripp checking the play call from head coach Cade Burns. It's to Mora again. Stumbled forward and settled for about a 3-yard carry to the 41. Sanchez there being aggressive coming in on the stop.
Right. He wrapped Mora up and brought him down on first contact, which most people don't do. You know what's really fatal about this Mason offense, Craig, is look at the Stamford sidelines. It's just quiet. I think they're a little disheartened. They're used for something wide open, fast-paced. But Mason sucks the air out of a stadium because they run so much, they eat so much time off the clock, and it's hard to keep your emotion level up.
As you hear coaches say, rocking them to sleep right now with what they're doing with the ground game. 2nd down and 7. At the puncher 41. Tripp under pressure, down he goes. Big play by Mario Gonzalez, the rover, coming in for the sack. And he'll take it all the way back to the 34-yard line. That's a loss of 8 yards.
In more ways than one, that is momentum-changing play. Watch Mario off the edge. He gets past the chip, over the block, and then he brings down the guy in the backfield. Now the sideline's into it. And if you can force your stop here on 3rd down, you get the ball back. Totally new ball game. If you give up this one, you're right back where you were, which was a little bit in the doldrums.
This is where Stamford wants to have Mason out. 3rd down. And in fact, the punchers are going to call a timeout to discuss it here. With 6.5 minutes to play in the first half. Mason will face its first real 3rd down and long coming up. They'll have 3rd and 14 from their own 34 when we come back. First crucial 3rd down coming up for the Mason punchers here. 3rd and 14 from their own 34. And Cade Burns Ball Club has been perfect on 3rd down so far in the first half, and doing it on the ground here. It looked like Austin Tripp was going to throw the last time, but was sacked.
That's just ridiculous. 23 runs in 1 pass. I bet you they run it here too, Craig.
Check it out on 3rd down and 14, and a blitz look from Stamford. Off play action. Now looking to throw his Tripp. Downfield has Stockbridge open. A first down as Chance Stockbridge on the receiving end is all the way down to the 17-yard line. A 48-yard strike from Austin Tripp.
And you know what? I said I thought they were going to run it. Stamford did too. Even they had guys even in position to pick up a play action there, and Stockbridge still got behind him because he only needed half a second of the defense looking the wrong direction to hit the gap. That kid, number 3, Stockbridge, is so smart. He's so aware on the football field. It says the coach, sometimes they allow him to get all the defensive players into place on defense. He doesn't get him there, but he gives him a thumbs up to tell him he still knows what they're doing.
We haven't even told you what he does on defense, but that's a big play on offense, and it's first down and 10 for Mason as the punchers off that 48-yard pass have it at the 17-yard line in a stack-eye look. A handoff is to Mora, picking his way through the defense, and will settle for nearly 8 yards, moving inside the 10. Hagan Hutchinson on the tackle.
It's the big, tight guard, Michael Williams there, who got up in the gap. And again, just like Tripp did in the first quarter, he didn't pick up a great block, but he got enough. And the Mason offense is not designed for big plays. It's designed for 6 and 7 yards. And just enough is good enough for Mora to get 4 more. It seems like we're repeating ourselves, but that's what the Mason offense does. It repeats itself over and over.
And they'll repeat the stack eye look with 3 running backs. And there's Mora. Inside the 5, it'll be first and goal. Punchers inside the 3. Austin Alvarado saved the touchdown, at least for the moment, but it's down to the 2-yard line.
Man, that Stockbridge catch was huge, wasn't it? I mean, you're talking about a long third down. Stanford could get the ball back, tie this game up on a score, but instead now they're looking down the gun at 21-7 with time ticking away in the second quarter. It's a very tough situation.
What a first half already for David Mora.
19 rushes, 123, and 1 touchdown. For this kid, that's nothing. He's got a lot more left in him today.
First and goal from the 2. Mora will have his second touchdown. Ball came loose, but he had already crossed the plane of the goal line, and it is a touchdown for Mason. Mora had broken the plane of the goal line. The ball popped out afterwards, but David Mora has his second rushing touchdown of this first half.
So if they complete the extra point here, it makes it 21-7. There's 5:10 left in the second quarter. I'll go on a limb, Craig, and say that this next Stanford drive is the most important one of the game. It may end up being that way, because if they don't score and they give the ball back to Mason again, it could be 24 or 28-7.
Well, that was very close to popping out as he was going across, but of no consequence because Corey Zavala was there to fall on it anyway.
As close as that guard will ever be to the football.
Yeah, Zavala may be telling on the sideline, you know, I really had that touchdown. Here's the kick. And the extra point is good from Rio Schmidt. It is now a 21-7 lead for Mason and only 5:10 remaining in the first half.
You know what? When we talked to Coach Hutchinson, the one thing that stood out to us, he's very calm, very put together, he's very tranquil, and that's what this team needs right now. You can't have a coach that gets as panicked as a kid can sometimes in these situations. Hutchinson's job now is pretty simple. Just tell his kids, hey, look, I know it hasn't gone our way, but you're okay. You were down at halftime against Mart. You played 2 teams in the playoffs that you'd lost to in the regular season. You've seen adversity. You know what's around the corner. Don't go down that bend in the road.
Coming up, we'll have the Ford Halftime Show. My partner on Friday nights, Rick Renner, High School Scoreboard Live, along with the recruiting guru, Randy Rogers, in our Fox Sports Southwest studios. Stats and highlights, not only of this game, but a preview of the full day here at Cowboy Stadium in Arlington. Full day number 1 of 3 of the state championship weekend. 3 touchdown drives, and that guy had a lot to do with it. Chance Stockbridge, the 48-yard reception. We said we haven't even told folks what he does on defense.
Well, here's a great opportunity. Coach told us, you know, he doesn't look big, and you can see there in the shot he's not a big kid, but he is an absolute monster back there at safety. He's picked off 12 passes this season. That's one of the most in anyone in any class, but he's also a really hard hitter. Coach Burns said no one even wants to go up against him in practice because he hits like a runaway train. He doesn't look big, but he's pretty darn good.
Looked like quite the locomotive on the catch for 48 yards on 3rd down and 14. To this point, that's the key play of this entire first half. The kickoff from Schmidt. This one a deep kick. And it was fielded by Washington. And inside of the 10. And Washington picks up a big block out of the 30 and then tripped up across the 35. And James Washington, nice return out to the 38-yard line.
Andy Duarte was the guy who got in there and stuck a hand and brought down Washington, which is pretty tough to do, taking out a big tight end on a kick return. But he gets them enough of a charge. He gets them in good field position, which is something Stanford, they haven't had all game long, but they also needed it to get their fans back into it again. It's the second time we've said that. On that long 3rd down conversion, the air went right out of the stadium again. Got to try and find a way to keep the energy up.
And they do have the offense built for a comeback, as you mentioned.
Yes, they definitely do. Quick strike. I bet you they go to Ramos here again.
Hutchinson out of the shotgun. Look to keep it himself, and the Mason defense looking for it. Andy Duarte coming over on the tackle. It's a 2-yard pickup to the 40, and it's 2nd down and 8.
If we give a defensive MVP at the end of the day, Andy Duarte's got his name written all over it right now. I mean, he's possibly saved a touchdown and a kickoff return. He stuffed for a tackle or loss on Stanford's last possession. And now another one with Hutchinson running up. They only held him to a 2-yard gain. Could have been a lot more.
2nd down and 8 for the Bulldogs. Hagan Hutchinson, junior quarterback, looking to go to the air now with a lot of time and looking for Ramos and finding him for the first down. Jesse Ramos down to the 45-yard line. That picks up 15 yards and a first down.
Those 2 plays have been the story of the game so far, Craig. Stanford hasn't been able to run, but they've been able to throw at will. And every time Hutchinson drops back to pass, Mason's not been able to get a whole lot of push defensively and rush him as a passer. But when they run the ball, they're right up in the gaps, and that's actually exactly what you expected of Mason, who played in a run-oriented district.
From the Mason 45, Hutchinson will keep it himself. Big running run, and here goes Hagan Hutchinson. Hutchinson tripped up at the last moment, by Chance Stockbridge, but he's all the way down to the 6-yard line of the Punchers, where it'll be first and goal after a 39-yard run.
So the common football adage is that you run to open up the pass. Not so today right now with Stamford. They've been passing to open up the run. They hit Ramos on the crossing routes the second time they've looked for him right there, and then that opens up the space and softens up the linebackers for them to be able to run the football. That's how they can have a recipe for success, even though it's backwards.
First and goal. Stamford from the Mason 6. The sweep to Alvarado. Picked up a block, and he'll finish the job. Austin Alvarado across for the score. Dalton Mathis, the big block, and Stamford right back in it.
Exactly. You know, we've talked so much about Hagan. We've talked so much about David Mora, but the real guy here that could have a major impact is Alvarado. Watch, he bounces it to the outside, gets a nice block from Dalton Mathis, number 4, finds the end zone. Coach said that the guy who's really shown up in the playoffs more than anyone else, more than anyone expected, was Alvarado, the running back.
Well, that drive was 62 yards, and it took all of 1 minute and 16 seconds, which is exactly what Stamford wants. Extra point kick misses, however, to the right by Noah Contreras, as it floated off to the right and just did miss.
Let's take a look at Dalton Mathis right here. He's going to jump in and lay this block right on top of the linebacker, or right on top of the guy. Right there, which brought him down. You saw it right on the knees right there, and it sprung Alvarado open for a big gap. Wide receivers don't get a lot of credit for blocking very often, Craig, but when they do it right, that's what really makes run plays go, because when you get into the secondaries, when you turn something 10 into something 30. Dalton Mathis gets a gold star for that one.
And a reprieve on the point after, because Mason was offside. Contreras with another try, and this time it's also no good to the left. Hooked that one over to the left.
Extra points, in case if you're watching 1A or 2A football for the first time, yeah, extra points are an adventure. A lot of teams, they just forego them and go for 2, but Stamford and Mason are 2 teams that line up, they take those kicks, but as we've seen several times, you know, throughout the years, Craig, I know you have, extra points, they seem small, but they make a big difference. Last week in the 3A D1 title game, Tyler Chapel Hill beat Alvarado 20-19 because Alvarado lined up to go for 2 instead of a point after, couldn't convert it, no one scored again for the final 10 minutes.
Had a bad snap on it going for it, and that was the difference in the ball game.
That's right.
20-19 there. Here it is 21-13 as Mason has the lead on Stamford. Let's go down to the sidelines to Neil Beasley.
Hey, thanks a lot. Academy Sports and Outdoors, of course, is the team behind the teams, so we always look for the team behind the teams, and we've got the Mason Punchers cheerleaders, but they're kind of unique in that they get to cheer all the time in a dome, the Puncher Dome. What is that all about?
It's our own little Cowboy Stadium, except for back in the day it used to be a racetrack, and then we turned it into a football stadium, and that's really where the Punchers win, so hopefully we'll get another win here.
And it's got a little roof over it. That's why it's called the Puncher Dome, right?
Yes, sir. Over the home section it does.
So that's why they're leading, is because they're used to playing in a big dome. How about the Mason Punchers for the Academy Sports and Outdoors, the team behind the teams?
See, there's the secret. That's why Mason has been so good today, right?
They're used to playing under a roof. By the way, before we forget to mention this, the nickname Puncher, that's not just pugilistic, folks. It's actually short for cowboy or cowpoke or cowpuncher. And the reason that term came about is cowboys used to usher cows into stock cars, and they did it with sticks, and that was called poking or punching. Hence their full name, the Cowpunchers, hence shortened to Punchers.
Punching them dogies. Yep, used to call it. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked this week about that. Punchers? Really? That's kind of violent, isn't it? No, actually, it's rather rural and agricultural.
Agricultural, yes. It's a great nickname, though. One of the best there is out there.
No doubt. Punchers ready to go back to work, but I'll tell you what, the counter punch came from Stamford on that touchdown drive, and it only took them 1 minute 23 seconds, and that's what they needed as James Washington prepares to kick off. Quick strike. Washington's kick down the middle, and Stockbridge will field this at the 8-yard line. There's Chance Stockbridge, center of the field, and Washington has to wrap him up with some help. But an excellent return by Chance Stockbridge out of the 40 up to the 42-yard line. He brought that back 35 yards.
Stockbridge is slowly starting to take over this game in this second quarter. And I think what's really impressive about him is he comes from a great lineage. His dad was a former star player, Denver Stockbridge at Mason.
Well, there you see what Mason has. 197 students. 33 out of that 197 on Cade Burns' roster, and 17, half of those are seniors. And more than half of those seniors are starters. So this is a senior-laden ball club.
And it's an odd dichotomy today because Mason uses a lot of seniors. You saw 10 starting. Stanford's only got 3. And most 1A, 2A games teams only get to title games with a lot of seniors, not a little.
Mason does have 2 timeouts left. 3:40 to go here in the first half. Back to the ground to Mora. Good first down yardage, a pickup of 6 to the 48. Jerry Gonzalez tackle. You see Blake Barnett, who had been banged up, but getting that medical attention on the sideline now.
We haven't seen a lot of those today, injuries, which is surprising because Mason hits so hard, so physically. You thought you'd see maybe kids go out a couple points. But I guess at this time, you never want to go off the field no matter what's wrong. Your arm could be hanging off and you still want to go out there and play.
Second down and 4 from the 48. Trip with a long count. The toss this time outside. And good movement on that run all the way down to the 45-yard line by Rio Schmidt. And that'll be a pickup and a first down after that 7-yard gain.
Not to over-exaggerate, but that was very Earl Campbell, Jack Tatum, as Hagan Hutchinson, the best player for Stanford, came right in and stuck David Mason, Moore, the best player for Mason. And Moore just shook him off and got another 4 yards, just like Tatum did once to Earl Campbell way back in the day for the Oilers.
At the 45 of Stanford. See the time remaining in the first half. Mason in with 2 timeouts. To Mora. Squirting through again is Mora, and a gain of 5 more. Nearly 6 more yards as it coaxes inside the 40-yard line. And take a look at the hitting that happens on this prior play.
Right, here's Hutchinson, number 16. You're going to see him come off the top of the right end of your screen. That's actually Rio Schmidt coming up. There's Hutchinson, just sticks him, and Schmidt just dismisses him and moves on. That's a fullback run right there. It's a grown man's effort from Rio Schmidt. By the way, also the head coach of the community Pee Wee football team. So that kid knows a little bit about all these different positions and all the different things they do.
David Moore, by the way,
Timeout. Off here.
after timeout was called, shaken up. And he's being helped. And that, you hope, is not serious, as David Moore has to be helped from the field right now, and Mason calling it second of 3 timeouts.
He looks winded. He almost looks like he got the wind knocked out of him a little bit, the way he was leaning over, reaching towards his abdomen, and now he's just trying to jog it off. Probably just got his bell rung a little bit, but when you carry a football, Craig, 498 times last year like he did, you're going to get used to that. I'm sure this is nothing he hasn't seen before, and it's his career now, 899 career carries.
And consider this, because they use the timeout, Moore can go back into the game now.
Exactly. Maybe that's what they wanted. Maybe they have a good play in mind that they've got lined up for him.
As we told you, this is the first of 3 games here today. The first of 3 consecutive days of 3 games, championships, all of them. This is the first one going on right now. Later this afternoon, also in this classification, Conference A, as the UIL calls it, Class 1A, the Division II championship. Monday takes on Tenaha, and then tonight the 2A Division I championship, Hempstead against Melissa. Second down and 5. The ball is at the 40-yard line, and Moore is back in the ball game at the tailback spot. He'll get the call. Mora, first down and Moore is still on the move. Down to the 25-yard line as he goes for 15 more yards before Hagan Hutchinson can wrap it up. Looks all right to me.
They didn't even look like there was much there. I think maybe what makes Mora so dangerous, standing next to him on the field before the game started, he's not big. He's very small, and so I think at times it's hard for defenders to see him. Watch, between 71 right there, you couldn't even see him next to 71's shoulder. He was so much smaller. He's able to get through tiny spaces because no one can find him.
First down, a toss to Mora again. This time Hutchinson was ready for him, lower the shoulder, and still Mora picks up nearly 4 more yards on that carry. You know, we were talking about that Class A Division II championship that follows this one. Tenaha against Monday. Tenaha very, very explosive out of East Texas. And Monday just up US 277 from Stamford. And those two played the first game of the year at Shotwell Stadium in Hamilton.
Exactly. They're not far apart in both teams. Both Monday and Stamford have lots of speed. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later throughout the day, how Monday and Tenaha have both dominated the state track meet as of late.
At the 22-yard line, so it's a pickup of 3 yards, and it's second down and 7, and Mora the call again, and look at him stop and start and move again. Now near the 16-yard line, a little bit short of the first down. Mario Gonzalez to tackle. You see the time. Mason has 1 timeout remaining here in the first half.
with a little bit over a minute left to go. Now, here's where it really depends on clock management. If you're Coach Cade Burns, you've got to manage this minute well. Maybe you can get another score out of it.
On third down, calling 2 needed for the first down. Mora with Tripp in front to block, picks up the first down. 4 yards on the carry, down to the 13. Rudy Sanchez the tackle. Clock will stop while they move the chains, but now it's down to 48 seconds. And again, 1 timeout remaining for Mason, as they'll have it at the 13-yard line of Stamford.
Rudy Sanchez is having a heck of a game. He wasn't in position to make that tackle and just jumped on the ball carrier's back and brought him down. He's playing with a lot of heart right now.
See the time moving. Tripp. Mora, and a reverse around the corner to Stockbridge. Throws back to the end zone, and for the touchdown, Jake Newsom. Just when you think Mason is going to grind it again, they come up with a bit of trickery for the score.
You said it, Craig. They never, ever go with something like that. They're so monotonous in what they do that when they pull something out of the bag of tricks, it's almost impossible to react fast enough. Hagan Hutchinson's so close to getting there, and if maybe a 1/10 of a second reaction faster, he's got it. But Chance Stockbridge plays that perfectly and puts a perfect pass on the money.
That senior throwing to senior after the flip to him from the senior running back, Mora. And that one goes for 13 yards. The extra point kick is good. And the touchdown has given Mason a 15-point lead on our DQ big play of the game here in the first half.
Now again, there's several moving parts to this play. And like we said, Craig, a lot of it is predicated on the fact that they've done similar looking plays quite frequently in the first half, and they just changed the end of it. Let's go ahead and take a look at it here. He's going to take the snap. He's got lots of time. They're going to hand it off to Stockbridge on the reverse, and he's got lots of time to throw it. And the easy thing to do there is underthrow it for a kid who doesn't throw a lot, but he puts it perfectly to where only Newsom can catch it. A great, well-disguised play by Mason.
Well, like you said, the Stockbridge factor here in the first half, as well as the Mora factor. They've been the 2 big leaders, and don't forget about Austin Tripp, who has scored and also had an interception in the first half. So those 3 guys have been the big 3 for the Punchers.
Everyone came in talking about Mora, but Coach Burns told us, look, I mean, Mora's a heck of a player, and we know he is all-state caliber every year, but there are a lot of guys on this team who had to make plays this year to put us in this situation. We're a better team the less we have to lean everything on David Mora, who you see there, number 13. We are a better, more talented team when everyone can get involved and where we don't have to put so much on Mora.
Hey, in the NHL vernacular, he gets an assist.
But again, that's a very well-disguised play because everyone, I'm sure including you and I, thought that that was indeed a Mora handoff, and then there's Stockbridge coming around. But they haven't needed Stockbridge much on defense, so he's finding a way to make an impact offensively.
The kickoff to come with just 25 seconds remaining in the half. Rio Schmidt. Knock it down the middle. Washington field at the 17-yard line. Now sprinting outside. The Punchers trying to string it out, and they do. Purple jersey surrounding James Washington. And the first man to hit him downfield for the Punchers leads the assault. Now it'll be Stamford football with just 16 seconds remaining in the half.
So if you're Stamford, now comes the riddle of the game. Do you try and take some kind of a shot or some kind of a play here, or you just knee and go to halftime and just try and regroup? With a guy like Jesse Ramos, personally, I think I'd try and look for something for him in the flat, just see if he can break some tackles. You never know, but I'm a risk taker.
Hagan Hutchinson is looking to throw. Ramos was open for a moment. Instead, it's a crossing around the dog to Mathis. Mathis brought down at the 27-yard line, so it's a pickup of 4 yards and out of bounds with 10 seconds remaining in the half.
They bought Ramos in the slot receiver on a cross. They were trying to free up Ramos down this left-hand sideline and try and get him for a big game, but the Mason defense was wise to it. I wonder if they're going to try and find a different way to get him involved, maybe a deep crossing route or something, try and get him some open space.
Stamford with all of its timeouts remaining as well. There's the pass downfield to Ramos, and trying to shake a tackler, but holding on to push him out of bounds was Austin Tripp. It's 24 yards, but Tripp perhaps prevented a touchdown.
I think he did. That's a very, very deep corner route that Hagan Hutchinson made a great throw to get it to him on opposite hash, no less. Or actually on the same hash. But now they're at the 50-yard line with 4 seconds left. Great chance for a Hail Mary. Maybe some kind of starburst play where you try and tip it to another guy trailing on the play if Hutchinson has the arm strength to get it there.
Ramos at the bottom of your screen, along with Bo Wimberly. And Stamford's going to use one of its remaining timeouts.
Timeout. Offense.
Trying to map out strategy here. They had all 3 of their timeouts remaining, so Wayne Hutchinson, let's see if we can set this play up here.
Yeah, you can't take them with you. So, I mean, you might as well have gone out there and at least see what Mason was showing. You know, there's no guarantee the punchers are going to roll out in a similar formation of personnel, but at least you know something now. So, again, the play I was describing earlier, Craig, we saw Katie score on this against Pflugerville in a title game several years ago. You run a guy into the end zone. He goes up for the ball. His only objective, unless he can obviously catch it, is to tip it to a trailing wide receiver. And in a situation, maybe you throw James Washington, a big body, down there if you have time to get him there, and he does a tip to someone like Ramos who's got great ball skills. It doesn't always work, but a lot of times it's better than just trying to target one guy and chucking it up in the middle of 3 defenders.
We'll have one play here from midfield.
You got to think Mason's going to roll 3 kids out at least fairly close to the goal line or probably as far back as the 20.
At the top of your screen is Dalton Mathis and James Washington in the slot. And down low at the bottom of your picture, Bo Wimberly and Jesse Ramos. One final play of the first half, and Hutchinson looking for Ramos, and it is nearly intercepted. Ramos was going on the deep cross, but Chance Stockbridge cut in the middle and broke it up to do it for the first half. And what a first half it was for the Mason Punchers.
Exactly. They did everything they wanted to do. They controlled the clock dominantly. Their run game was excellent. Their defense was very good, especially against the run. You can't ask for a better 2 first quarters.
4 possessions, and they wind up with 4 touchdowns, and they have the 28-13 halftime lead as Mason will take that lead into the locker room here, a 15-point advantage. Let's go down to the sidelines to Neil Beasley.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, Coach, that last touchdown, little trickery. Everything in the playbook is open for you, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we kind of set that up, running those formations we did to get that drive down there, and he kind of underthrew it, but fortunate enough, our kid came back, made a great play on it. And we wanted to kind of run the clock down a little bit because they're so explosive offensively to give them as less time as possible to score.
I'm guessing with that running game you have, that's what you wanted to do. Get up 15, that's a good lead for you to halftime.
Well, we like to run the ball, and our kids believe in running the ball, and, you know, it's just a philosophy that we have and that our kids have, and they buy into it, and we feel like the team that can run the ball has the best chance of winning usually.
One more have to go, Coach.
That's correct. Let's get it.
Craig, let's go back up to you.
All right, thank you very much, Neil. And now as we go to a break, we bring you this special message from your Texas Ford dealers. Halftime at Cowboy Stadium here in Arlington of the Class A Division I State Football Championship. And the UIL's first title up for grabs today. Mason leading Stamford here at intermission by a score of 28-13. Craig Way here along with Travis Stewart. And in the first half, we knew this was going to be the contrasting styles. You mentioned at the top of the telecast, when you look at it, Travis, the fact that Stamford was going to throw the football, Mason was designing to run the football, and so far, Mason with the upper hand.
Everything's played out exactly according to form so far. Mason's run the ball extremely well. They've done a great job controlling the line of scrimmage, which we expected. And Stamford only 13 points, but one of them came on a long strike. They've done a good job of stretching the field. They just haven't been able to get defensive stops against the run game.
And the run game, of course, is led by David Mora. And what a big first half the senior running back had.
Exactly, looking at the work that he did. He's a very small runner, but he's powerful, and he did a great job of reading all of his gaps. As you can see, he runs over a defender there, but he's always in the correct gap at the right time. And a lot of that is just offensive integrity. They know where they're supposed to be, and Mora encapsulates that.
So, how does Wayne Hutchinson plan to account for Mora in the second half and get his own offense back in gear? For all the details, we send you down to the sidelines to Neil Beasley.
All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, with Coach Wayne Hutchinson. A coach down 15, but you got an offense that can strike quickly. How do you get it back on the plus side?
You know, we just got to do a much better job of stopping their offense. You know, we're getting them too many yards on first down. They're getting 5 yards apart from the first down, putting us in a bind defensively. We're going to have to get our pad level down. We're going to have to be a little bit quicker, win our battles up front defensively, and see if we can get some stops in the second half. You know, we're averaging at least 5-6 yards a carry offensively, and we just feel like if we can get enough touches the second half, we have the capability of scoring fast, and that's exactly what we expect to do.
Defensively, do you have to be more aggressive to try and stop, or just do what you do and do it better?
You know, we're going to have to get off the blocks up front a little bit better. We're getting double teamed up front. We're getting pushed back in our linebackers, and you know, we're just going to have to win it up front in the trenches. It's basically what we got to do.
Good luck the second half, Coach.
All right, thank you.
All right, Craig, back up to you.
All right, thanks very much, Neil. Well, we talked about David Moore and what an impact he had on the first half. Hagan Hutchinson has to have that kind of impact in the second half for Stamford.
Agreed. All the superstars for both teams have to step up because this is where all the season goes on the line. When you're talking about Mason, Austin Tripp, their quarterback, he's had a good job or a great game so far passing the ball, but his biggest impact has become in blocking and picking up extra points, doing the dirty work, and that's helped Mora pick up, obviously, his yardage and his great performance in the first half. On the other side of the ball, when you look at Stamford, it does come down to Hagan because obviously offensively he's so talented, he's done a good job, but he's really been the forefront of their defense as well. He's been in making tackles in the run game, trying to cover in the secondary. It's probably a little unfair to expect so much out of one kid, but he is their bell cow. He's going to have to deliver in the second half if they want to make up 15 points.
28-13 the score. Stanford trailing, and remember, Mason's going to get the football to start the second half because remember the punchers had that 3 and out. It's the only 3 and out we've seen in the football game was the first possession of the ball game when Stanford had to get rid of the football and Mason came right down the field and scored.
Well, that's why that last touchdown from Mason hurt Stanford so badly because they knew it was not only a score, but then they're going to have to go out and get a stop right away in the second half. But we talked earlier, Craig, about how the drive where Mason converted the long third down was the most important drive. I still think that could be the case, but this is going to be a close second because here's where you're going to find out what kind of tweaks both teams made at halftime. For Stanford, you heard Coach Hutchinson saying, well, we have to get off our blocks better. Well, that's just not going to happen. They had to get in there and talk to kids about technique. They're going to have to find ways to cover gaps a little bit better. We're going to know how this second half is going to play out by a lot of what we see from Stanford right now.
And when it comes to drives in the first half, Mason was about as impressive as you can get when you look at the State Farm possession chart. Look at that.
Well, look at the yardage, 72, 65, 73, 58. There's a lot of opportunities in there to get behind and down in distance, to end up having to punt the ball when you run the ball as much as they do. That's a testament to how well they ran the ball and how they always ended up with positive yardage. Again, that goes back to David Mora.
And we just heard Wayne Hutchinson talk about how his team has got to get off blocks quicker defensively to try to put the clamps on Mora and the punchers.
So let's say that David Mora is always going to get 2 yards after contact, okay? Well, that means you can't give him 2 right off the bat. That's what getting blocks is all about. They have to find a way to get to him at the line of scrimmage so when he does get his 2, it still leaves him behind down in distance. Of course, that's easier said than done. He ran for 3,500 last year and 2,200 this year. No one's really been able to do that.
And, of course, when Coach Hutch's football team has it on offense, they want to get that high-octane big play attack in gear again.
Well, they have to get there first. They've got to get a stop here. If you end up going down 35 or 31 to 13 right now, it means you essentially have to throw the entire second half, and that's where Chance Stockbridge is just going to be prowling like a tiger back there in the secondary. You got to find a way to get the ball stopped here and get it back in your hands.
So, Stamford to kick it off. Chance Stockbridge back deep to receive it for the Mason Punchers. Second half of the first game of 9 for a state championship. A little pop-up kick and a fair catch called for and made. Nice play made on the fair catch by tight end Kramer Watson, who pulls it in for the Punchers.
It was actually, they had left that about a yard shorter. It would have been right at 10 yards, and Stanford would have had a good shot at that. That's a la New Orleans Saints, Indianapolis Colts Super Bowl going for the onside right out of half. We can take a look at the first half stats real quick, and they'll tell you, Craig, I think a lot of what the story of this game has been so far with Mason's ground game and how well David Mora has played. And look at the first downs there, 16 for Mason, just 9 for Stanford. And Coach Hutchinson was talking about how he thought they were running the ball well. Well, 94 to 208 in the ground game, that's a bad formula against Mason.
And over 17 minutes of possession time out of 24 in the first half. Here goes Mora again. And a first down. One broken tackle away from going the distance. Hagan Hutchinson would not allow that to happen, but he did come in on the end of a 12-yard run.
Picks up two really nice blocks there off the right edge. One's going to be on the offensive lineman kicking out, number 53. He forces a man to the inside, and that gives Mora a lot of room to pick up about 10, 12, 13 yards there. Right now, this run offense, Stamford has not had an answer to it yet.
First down and 10, Mason. Again, the ground attack so effective for the Punchers. The toss this time to Schmidt. Turning the corner, and he broke tackles inside the 35 and down to the 34. Looked like he might be trapped, perhaps even for a loss. Dalton Mathis wraps him up, but he still managed to turn that into a 5-yard gain.
Well, Stamford had that read correctly. They had guys flowing to that side of the ball. They had one man that was right there waiting in the backfield, but that was actually more a case of a great run than it was great blocking. You know, Craig, the more you watch Mason, the more you realize this is not a team that does a lot. They don't do a lot of different things, but what they do very well. And that's a very difficult formula to stop.
First and 10, ball at the 34, or second down, excuse me, and 5, the ball at the 34-yard line. Mora again, and it will be first and 10 if they can turn a third and less than 1 into a first down, because Mora was stopped just shy of the first down by Ty McLemore. You know what you're describing there, Travis? You're describing the great Odessa Permian teams of the late 60s and into the 70s and into the 80s. Teams ran the ball, ran a lot out of wing T, and it was just difficult to try to stop their execution.
You know, a great man named Emery Ballard once said that football is really not complicated. When you boil it down, it's about guys versus guys. If you know how to do it, you can't be stopped.
The architect of the wishbone, straight ahead, and still straight ahead is Austin Tripp. Tripp going ahead on what looked to be a short quarterback keeper and just exploded through the secondary until Hutchinson ran him down after a 25-yard gain.
You always keep your feet moving, right? When you're carrying the ball, until you hear a whistle blow, you keep your feet churning, and that's what Tripp does here. Everyone, people in the stands up here in the box, we all expect that to be a 1 or 2 yard gain. And if you just keep pounding your feet, you never know what you might be able to get out of that.
Looked like Ty McLemore had a shot at him and couldn't hold him, and then from there, Tripp rumbled 25 yards. First and goal, Mason. At the Bulldogs 6. To Mora. Mora, his third touchdown of his first game of the championship run. And David Mora takes it across for 6 more.
You know what? When we talked to Coach Burns about this Mason offensive line, he said when I came in, we didn't give everything to them right away because they were running a strict I formation before under head coach Russell Joy, and then obviously Kay Burns running more of a wing T. He said we gave things to them a bit at a time. We didn't want to overload them with information right away, but they responded to everything so well. You would never in a million years guess this offensive line is in their first year in a new system and their first year under head coach. They look like seasoned veterans playing on this.
For the conversion. Schmidt. The kick is through. It's all working for Mason here this afternoon, especially for that young man, David Mora. 3 touchdowns for Mora. And the Mason Punchers deliver another blow. Yeah, there's some big fellas, but they're fast too. And it's 35-13 Punchers. The 1A Division I State Championship is brought to you by State Farm. Visit texas.statefarm.com to score the ultimate VIP experience. By your Texas Ford dealers, check out the F-150, the truck of Texas. Ford is the best in Texas. By Academy Sports and Outdoors, right stuff, low price, every day. And by DQ, for the best tasting treats, eats, and drinks in Texas. DQ just tastes better. Well, one tradition at state championship time is to wear the Santa hats in your school's color, and that's what Stamford is doing there, and they hope they still have some fight in them, as the Mason Punchers certainly do. They lead 35-13. A kickoff and a big return by Alvarado. It'll be good field position for the Bulldogs as they'll start from their own 44-yard line. We talked about the State Farm possession chart for Mason. What about Stamford here? And just you saw the mistakes, or the 3 and out in the interception sandwiched around the touchdowns.
Well, also a key in this, besides the end result, is look at where they started. 17, 28, 30, 28, 23. That's not necessarily bad, but 17, 23, those aren't great starting positions. And even if you're a quick strike offense, you got to start somewhere good.
And this will be their best starting field position of the afternoon. Hutchinson to the air. Sliding catch made by Dalton Mathis for a first down at the 42-yard line of Mason. So a quick move of the chains on first down, a strike of 13 yards.
You know, I thought Stamford was at their best today when the offensive pace was high, and that's what they're doing again. Look, they're already lined up and ready for the snap.
From the puncher 42. Hagan Hutchinson sending Mathis in motion, and he'll keep it himself, but Mason's defense ready, and it was Kyle Zavala who comes over with a big hit, and that is a freshman making that hit.
Exactly. Very talented. His older brother, Corey, is obviously a defensive lineman and guard as well. That's been the frustrating thing for Stamford is when they haven't been able to run the ball. Look, now they're in 2nd and 11. They've lived in a lot of long second down situations. It's tough to convert against the Mason defense when you're in those positions.
Not often you see a freshman playing at the varsity level, but you do see that more often at the lower classification level. Hutchinson was looking for Ramos, now going downfield and finds him. And Ramos for the first down. Down to the 20-yard line. Another strike from Hutchinson. This one carries 23 yards.
That was a picture-perfect example of what makes Hutchinson dangerous. You'll watch his head here. We'll actually take a look at Jesse Ramos on this deep crossing route, somewhere he has just lived today, finding a way to fight and get open. But Hutchinson went through at least 2 reads there. That may have been actually his 3rd read that he finally got the ball out on. And that's what Coach Hutchinson said makes him so dangerous, as he does a good job of getting through his sequence and finding an open man.
Couple of big pass plays for the Bulldogs, and it's down to the Mason 20. Hutchinson will keep it. Looking for a block outside, in some trouble, and forced out of bounds by Austin Tripp. That'll be a loss. Back to the 25-yard line, a loss of 5.
That was number 11, Tanner Dutton, the middle linebacker for Mason, all the way. He got picked up on an early block off the edge, blew it up, and that's what forced Hutchinson way outside. And that's it. Once he got there, the defense was in pursuit, and he never found a seam after that. Tanner Dutton doesn't get talked a lot about on this Mason team, but he's a key central cog for them.
2nd down and 15. Stamford's been able to come up with some big passes even when they've been behind the chains. And Hutchinson looking to throw again. Looking, got a man wide open. Caught. And it's Dalton Mathis inside the 5.
That's good play calling. You love to see that. They had 2 wide receivers on that right side. They brought one across the middle of the field, which drew the safety in, and that left Mathis wide open down the field. And watch, is actually a very nice catch because he's actually in traffic. Most guys here, they take their eye off the ball and they start looking at the defender. They look for the hit, but he doesn't. He keeps his eye on the ball and gets him in good position.
First down and goal, Stamford at the Mason 2-yard line. Hutchinson to keep it, and he's across for the score. As we mentioned, this offense is the type of offense that can come back from deficits, and they've done it all season long.
Well, remember, we also talked coming out of half that it was going to be about adjustments. They showed that they have been able to adjust this offense. In some ways, maybe the second half is a perfect example of the Stamford offense as a whole, because Coach Hutchinson has always said, we want to react to what's given to us. We want to take advantage of what's there. Now that they have an entire first half of images and data to sort through, now they get into the second half and say, now we can plan our attack based on what we saw.
And they're going to go for 2 to try to get this back to a 14-point deficit. Hutchinson looking, target open, it was bounced and incomplete. Dalton Mathis was the target, but it's incomplete, and the try for 2 fails, and it's a 16-point Mason lead at 35-19 here with 8:17 to play 3rd quarter.
So now Stamford's got 19 points. Here's what's incredible, Craig. Mason's first string defense has allowed 32 points all year. Here's the 2-point conversion. This ball's coming right in. That looks like a catch, Craig.
Unfortunately, we're not in the National Football League or college football, so no replay. 16-point Mason lead.
My first year of high school football. I think I was playing on the varsity, and we were playing against Madison. And they had this huge fullback named Eddie Harden, and he was a load to bring down. And having the opportunity to play against a great football player at that time was really big. And I got got some good hits on him. So that was one of my best memories.
I have no doubt that Mike Singletary delivered a few big hits at the high school level as well as what he did at Baylor University and then in the NFL with the Chicago Bears. Andy Duarte on the kickoff return for Mason. Punchers will have good field position again. They'll start this drive from their own 37-yard line as Austin Tripp and the Punchers have a 16-point lead on Stamford.
You know, I can think of several small brands of car I'd rather be hit by than Mike Singletary. That is as fearsome a man as there was. So if you're Mason now, it's more of the same, just like it's been all day, Craig. You run the ball, you milk the clock, and you give it to Mora. He's your guy now. Even though you want to diversify, this is a chance for your star to shine.
Ball at the Puncher 38-yard line. And it's Mora getting the call 3 yards to the 41-yard line. Brought down by Daniel Medina, the junior weak side linebacker.
That's a name we have not heard called today, Craig, but he's the team's leading tackler. He's got 155 on the season, and he just has not been able to get involved. He's the weak side linebacker, and Mason has used strong side a lot, so maybe that's why. But I think that Mason's done a good job of game planning that kid out of the game, trying to keep the run away from his side.
2nd down and 7 for Mason. Up in that power eye once more. Gets to Mora. This time the Bulldogs give ground a little more grudgingly. Only a 2-yard carry for Mora to the 43. Medina this time again in on the stop, and now brings up 3rd down and 5.
All right, now we've had 3rd down with Mason before, and now it's going to have to be up to Stamford to finally get a stop here. They had a long 3rd down conversion. They got to Chance Stockford in the first half, and that led directly to a score. For Stamford, you can't let that happen to you again. Now's where you got to go out and get a stop. Remember, as Coach Hutchinson said, they just want to attack and mess things up. It's a great opportunity to do it.
3rd down and 5 for Mason. And off play action, Tripp to throw, downfield and incomplete. He was looking for Watson. Stamford adjusted, and it brings up 4th down. The first time today the Mason offense has been stopped.
And the key player defensively there was Jesse Ramos. He got out there and tipped the ball away at the last second. Almost looked like he was playing more center field than anything. And I tell you what, Craig, we've talked so much about Ramos as an offensive player. He's an honorable mention All-State defensive back, too. I mean, he can play both sides of the ball equally. He's very, very good.
So to punt it is Rio Schmidt. And his opposite, number 20, Jesse Ramos, back deep to receive it. A high snap. Kick is away and a wobbler. And this will not go very far, and Stamford is going to have tremendous field position coming out of this. The punt is going to be marked out of bounds on the Mason side of midfield. That's a 2-yard punt. 2 yards. And it'll be great field position for Stamford. Let's go down the sidelines to Neil Beasley.
All right, guys, there's tons of great storylines here, but one of these has to be Johnny Mendoza, number 71. He is for the Stamford Bulldogs. Here, this kid is a cancer survivor, and yet he is out here on the field. He's back. He's healthy enough now. He had a tumor behind his eye socket, and he is still on chemo, but he is doing much, much better. Obviously, he's out here with his boys, got the pads on. This is a memory of a lifetime for all these kids, but hopefully it's a nice, long, healthy memory for Johnny Mendoza, number 71.
All right, thanks very much, Neil. And on 1st down, Hagan Hutchinson finding Jesse Ramos. And takes it near another 1st down as you take a look at that tumor that was removed there.
That's incredible. That just goes to show you what kind of things kids play through down here at the 1A, 2A ranks just to represent their teams.
8-yard pass on 1st down, and on 2nd down and 2, Hutchinson picks up a big block and has a 1st down for Stamford. Down to the Mason 30-yard line. Elliott Bibb on the tackle. Momentum perhaps shifting now for the Bulldogs.
You read my mind again, and a guy that we haven't heard from a lot recently from Stamford is number 28, Washington, the tight end. Coach said, as good as Ramos is, as good as Mathis is, Washington's really the guy that makes that group work because everyone has to contend with him. He's right there in the slot right now, sitting on the bottom side of your screen, and no one's really on him. Could be a great opportunity for him.
1st down and 10. Stamford at the Mason 30-yard line. Hutchinson looking to go to the air again. Over the middle for Washington. There he is. James Washington right near the 1st down marker. He's being driven back now. They're going to mark him down at the 21-yard line. It's a gain of 9. Andy Duarte held him up You just got through saying his name in Washington for 9 there.
Stamford's in rhythm now, Craig. You can see it. Watch Hagen Hutchinson. He just looks more confident throwing the ball. He's got all the time in the world to throw it. He's got a lot of space to throw it into. Stamford, as we said, they want to attack open grass. You can tell they've made adjustments, and they have more space right now to work in offensively. Every wide receiver, every guy split out is playing well right now.
Second and a yard needed for the first. Hutchinson looks to pick up that yard and more, and he does. It'll be a first down, a gain of 6 down to the 15. Winston tripped the tackle for Mason, but it'll be first down for the Bulldogs as they continue the march here in the third quarter.
You know, it's odd. Normally after a big turnover or a short punt like that, when teams go for the jugular right away, they try and get in the end zone immediately to capitalize on the momentum shift, but Stamford has been content to work in smaller chunks, and it's been effective. When they have gotten away from the run game first and gone to throw the ball first and put this ball in Hagen Hutchinson's hand, it's when they've been most effective. Maybe that's their big tweak, is saying, Hagen, it's all you, boy.
First down and 10, Stamford at the Mason 15. Hagen Hutchinson. And there is Ramos, and he'll score. Across the middle, Jesse Ramos. Stamford, just a few minutes ago, was down 22. They're right back in this game.
All of a sudden, we have a ball game, and the offensive line for Stamford was awesome on that drive because every time Hagen dropped back, he had so much time to throw. Coach Hutchinson told us this was not a group that we thought was going to be a strength of the team. We knew they were good, but they're a bunch of overachievers who have really gelled, and you can see the cohesiveness right now. Mason has gotten no push on Hutchinson in the pass game.
Did not take the Bulldogs long to march at the 45 yards after just the 2-yard punt for the conversion. Noe Contreras, and the kick is good. And it's a 9-point lead. Stamford back-to-back touchdowns, as many possessions here in the third quarter. And all of a sudden, it's a 35-26 ball game.
Now, Mason brings 3, and they bring a guy late on the 4th spot, but it's too late, and Hagen got through at least 2 reads there before he was able to get Ramos again, Craig, on a crossing route. In my mind, I think crossing routes are so hard to cover with a fast guy like Ramos. It's what made, for example, Wes Welker a star in the NFL. They get off the line quickly, they cut quickly, and it's impossible to catch up before Hagen can get the ball to him. Ramos, as special as we all knew he was because of his all-state status, he's putting on a really fine performance today.
And another short drive in terms of time. Only 2:09 off the clock on that 45-yard 5-play scoring march.
Well, we know what Kate Burns is going to be telling Mason on the sideline. First of all, you're still up by 9, so there's no reason to be concerned. And second of all, this is where our team shines, because now is where we eat up the clock. I mean, there's only, 16 minutes left in the game? Mason can take half of that right now, and then that could still leave Stamford a possession down, even if they get the ball back.
James Washington to kick it off, but now you hear the Stamford side coming to life.
Yep.
They're back in it.
Coach Hutchinson told us one of the first things they had to change about Stamford when he got there 6 years ago was changing the attitude, trying to make these kids realize they could be winners again. I think right now you're seeing that resolve. These kids know and think and believe they can and will win.
This is a town with a great deal of state championship pride and history from many years ago. The kick is over Mora's head, who had to field it from the 5-yard line. And Mora brings it back and out to the 21-yard line. We'll go down to the sidelines to Neil Beasley.
Hey guys, you guys have talked about it as well. Stamford, really, they didn't show many signs of nerves. They're coming out in the second half, and they've been down earlier this year. A lot of times you see teams get in the state championship. They're not used to adversity. They've been winning all their games and winning big. And of course, these guys, Stamford, finished 3rd in their own district. So they had to deal with that in the regular season, came back to win those games in the playoffs, get a little revenge there. So these guys used to being down, no big deal.
Indeed. Thank you, Neil. 1st and 10. Mason starting from a 20-yard line. Stamford made adjustments last time. Now flags flying. This is going to cost Mason 5 more yards.
And we said earlier, Craig,
5-yard penalty, still first down.
We said earlier that 5 yards is something Mason can't afford in a run-based offense. They've overcome it once. They've also overcome a long 3rd down after a tackle for a loss. But penalties will really hurt this kind of offense. Now Stamford has a great opportunity to attack.
First down and 15. The ball at the 16-yard line.
They've got everyone in the box.
Toss to Mora. And nowhere to go this time. Daniel Medina now making his presence felt as Mora's dropped after no gain on the play.
The deepest man on the defense there was Hagan Hutchinson, and he was maybe 7 or 8 yards back, Craig. Now, Coach Hutchinson told us if they want to go foot to foot, tackle to tackle, and run the ball, that's fine. We'll load 9 people in the box. We have no problem doing it. And right there, they did it, and it worked out very well.
Mora actually did pick up a yard, so it's 2nd down and 14 for the Punchers. Austin Tripp under center, and this time looking to throw. Out and caught. And across the 25, still on his feet. And near the first down is Rio Schmidt, and Schmidt will have the first down. So the play action works for Austin Tripp, and Mason comes up with a big pass play and a pickup of 17 yards and a first down.
That was a great time for that call because Stamford knew that Mason was going to run. They just knew it because that's what they're doing all day. They want to milk the clock. So all of a sudden going to the air with a quarterback who's thrown it less than 80 times this year, that was a gutsy call, but it was the right call.
Punchers from their own 32. Tripp has Rio Schmidt and David Mora behind him. And it is Schmidt who gets the call. Across the 35 to the 36, a gain of 4 before the tackle was made by Keontae Smith.
You know, something we're seeing here, especially on the last 2 plays, is Rio Schmidt, even though Mora's a senior and Austin Tripp's a senior, and they're going to be starting over at those 2 key spots, Rio Schmidt is a junior. And we may be seeing the rise of the next great Mora back, the guy who can do a lot of things for you, who can lead your team into the playoffs. As far as a look into the future, I think Rio Schmidt's giving us a pretty good one right now.
2nd down. And 6. Stockbridge is one of 2 wide receivers. He's at the top of your screen. And this time it's Tripp, the design keeper, outside and shook off a would-be tackler and picks up big yardage. The man who had a chance to get him was Dalton Mathis, and Tripp shook it, got outside, takes it for another Mason first down.
Well, that's what makes a bootleg play so dangerous like that, Craig, is Stamford was singled up on the outside man-to-man, and their safeties were way in the middle of the field right inside the box. So if you can get around the corner and turn the edge, there's always going to be huge swaths of grass, or I guess in this case turf, to get out into and get first downs.
Gain of 8. Ball is out at the 44-yard line. First down and 10 for Mason. This time it's Mora. Still, the Bulldogs are looking for David Mora now, and Hagan Hutchinson wraps him up, only a 1-yard carry for Mora.
You know, Hagan Hutchinson is just a heck of a football player. For all of his offensive stats, he had 126 tackles on the season coming into this game. And keep in mind, he also punts, so he never comes off the field. Maybe a couple special time plays every game, but for the most part, he never leaves the field.
2nd down. And 9 from the 45. Sagan's dad, Wayne Hutchinson, head coach of the Stamford Bulldogs. Made a rally here in the 3rd quarter, from down 22 to down 9. Austin Tripp, room to run if he wants it. Now the pressure comes, and Tripp will settle for a short gain. Run out of bounds. Ramos part of that group, along with Rudy Sanchez. It's at the 48-yard line, and here comes another crucial 3rd down. It'll be 3rd and 6 for Mason coming up.
The big defensive end, Jacob Muhlstein, was there to mess things up as well.
Take a look at the Tenaha Tigers getting ready to take on the Monday Moguls in the Class A Division II state championship game. That's the 2nd one to follow here. Tenaha, one of the most explosive teams in the state.
You bet.
Timeout called by Mason. The Punchers want to discuss this. It's the big 3rd down coming up here. Mason was perfect on 3rd downs until the last possession. And now, the last 2 possessions have not gone the way of the Punchers. Stamford has come back, and now it's going to be 3rd down coming up for Mason, with the Punchers needing 6 yards.
You know, Craig, there's a theory that gets kicked around the Dave Campbell's Texas football offices a lot, and that's that when you get to this stage, this state title game, your seniors know there's a really good chance this is the last time they're ever going to play organized football. So when they get to this level, they see that they're down, they know their career is coming to a close. Something about them snaps, and they grow up in a hurry. They realize this is my only shot to make this part of my career end the way I want it to end, and margins disappear in a heartbeat. And that's what we've seen with Stamford.
And in specific with Stamford, we've seen it from Hagan Hutchinson, certainly on the offensive side, but now also on the defensive side.
And Jesse Ramos, especially the senior, you can tell he has been the heart of this team. Looking back at some highlights here, Hagen Hutchinson has been laying the wood defensively. Even if he couldn't get the guy down, he at least made first contact and slowed down the effort. Hagen Hutchinson's determined not to let this senior class go out like this.
Busy day for the two-way star of the Stamford Bulldogs. 3rd down and 6 for Mason from the puncher's 48. Tripp looking to throw. Pressure coming, uncorks it downfield, and that is incomplete. Dalton Mathis had a shot, the intercepted, couldn't hold it. Stockbridge, the target, but it's incomplete, and Mason will have to surrender the football again.
And the guy that made that play, even more than Mathis, was 34, Rudy Sanchez. He's going to dive in right on top of the quarterback and make him throw it, and that gives Mathis all the time in the world to play center field. He does not make the pick, but he stops it from being a catch. And if he doesn't get that ball, that's probably a touchdown. So in some instances, especially after we saw in a short punt last time for Mason, just forcing the incompletion, just as good as a turnover against this offense.
It is now 4th down and 6. Rio Schmidt was only able to get off a 2-yard punt because of the bad snap. Pulls in a little bit of a high snap, but this is a much better kick from Schmidt. Inside the 20, the bounce it takes, and that'll be shot into the end zone. And a wise move there by Bo Wimberly to let it go. Wimberly went up to it and then kind of gave it the Matador move and let the ball go by. Otherwise, it could have been real trouble for Stamford. Instead, it's a touchback. And the Bulldogs will start from the 20. We told you they have a state championship pedigree, Stamford is. And that was in the 50s under Gordon Wood, who, of course, established his own unbelievable record at Brownwood All of Championships. They had 4 teams that won them on the field, although the one over Brady in 1959 was ultimately forfeited due to the use of an ineligible player. But Stamford, one of the dominant programs in the 1950s. Now looking for the first state championship since that time. The pass intercepted by Winston Tripp. And Tripp inside the 20. And it'll go back over to the punchers. A big turnover there.
And I don't think Hagen ever saw him. That's Winston Tripp's second interception of the game. The first one, it looked like just a miscommunication between quarterback and receiver. This one, Tripp did a good job of hunkering down on the defensive side of the ball. Watch Hagen's eyes. Never sees number 7 come in from that blind side and pick that ball off. We've talked so much about Austin Tripp today with good reason, but Winston Tripp has been every bit the equal. He's been a great defensive player out there.
14-yard return off the interception by Winston. And all of a sudden, now Mason with the momentum. Off the turnover, first down of the Stamford 17. Mora trying to bounce it outside. He'll settle for a 4-yard carry. Nick Stanley, the junior middle linebacker, on the tackle.
Mora again. It seems like it's been a long time, Craig, really since the first half, since Mason's had a lot of continuity in the ground game. Everything's been disjointed. They had a penalty, they had a tackle for loss, and Mora has not been able to get near into the same kind of groove that he had in the first half when he was 5-6 yards a pop and 20 carries in the first half.
2nd down and 6. Mora and Schmidt, the running backs, offset, and behind the quarterback, Austin Tripp. It's Schmidt, but wrapped up early in the carry by Austin Alvarado. Maybe a yard to the 12, but nothing more than that, and it'll bring up 3rd down and 5.
Daniel Medina was in there as well, and like we said, we hadn't heard much from him early on, especially in the first half. Now that's several crucial tackles here in the second half. He's made a big difference. I wonder if Stamford has tried to drop away to get him closer in on those running plays and let him collapse and actually make tackles.
Mason is going to allow the 3rd quarter clock to run down, walk to the other end of the field and discuss their option here on 3rd down coming up. So we've come to the end of the 3rd quarter. Mason's still on top, but Stamford has made a game of it. At the end of the 3rd quarter of the 1A Division I State Football Championship, it's the Mason Punchers 35 and the Stamford Bulldogs 26. Right now, a special message from DQ. Through 3 quarters, Mason still with the overall edge, but Stamford narrowing the gap, certainly in total yards, even though Mason still with that overwhelming time of possession number. And you see Mason had converted its first 6 third-down situations, and then neither of its last 2. Stamford 0 for 2 on third down. They haven't got the third down many times because they've had some big strikes. Well, now it's going to be 3rd down and 6 for the Punchers as we welcome you back to Arlington. We looked at our forward stats. Forward here, Craig Wade, Travis Stewart, and Neil Beasley with you from Cowboy Stadium in Arlington. A handoff to Mora, bouncing through. Now he's going to be short of the 1st down, but maybe not by much. It depends on the spot. That second effort got it close, didn't it?
He's right on the stick. Stamford did a good job of reading where he was going and standing him up, but he just kept his feet moving and fought. And even if they don't get it, Craig, which it looks like they may be a little bit. Oh, they did get it.
They got it. Nose the football at it.
They were in 4-down territory anyway. I guarantee you they were going to go for it. So now it's time for Stamford to buck up. I mean, this is where you've got to give it all up, because if Mason gets a score here and they're in the 40s, that's a long ways to go with just under 12 minutes left to play. This is essentially the season. Have to find a way to back down here, and it's all going to start along that defensive line and linebacker core.
1st and goal for Mason at the Stamford 7. Out of the stack eye, it's David Mora. Mora for the 4th time today. David Mora finds the end zone.
Right there along the right side. He's had a lot of space, not immediately. He actually had to be patient and find where the hole was opening up along the offensive line. He made one cut up through the middle, and then he had his space. We've talked so much today about his vision. We've talked so much today about how he's not fast and how he's not big. But what he does do is he just finds space, and that's really what separates good backs from great ones.
On for the conversion. And Rio Schmidt to make this a 16-point Mason Puncher lead. Schmidt's kick is good. So Mason, which had some long drives, settles for a short drive because of the turnover, 17-yard march. But David Mora now over 200 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, and Mason with a bit more separation again.
What an incredible alpha omega moment for David Mora right now. I mean, once upon a time, this kid was a ball boy for Mason. I mean, he grew up on the sidelines. He said he'd love to watch the kids run out there with the horseshoe M on the helmet, and just dreamed one day of being able to play in this kind of situation. Well, now he's here. He's about 11 and a half minutes away from the state title game, and he's doing it all with his brother, his older brother Ubaldo, looking on and saying, you know what, this is exactly what we wanted from my little brother going up to this moment.
Well, just to tell you how impressive David Mora's day has been, you look at how he has dominated on the ground.
Exactly, and dominant's been the right word, because he's rarely, if ever, been tackled for a loss. He finds space. The Stamford defense has not had an answer for him, but he's also just fought. He takes a lot of contact early on in carries, Craig, but he always finds a way to move through it. Look, on every single one of those, arms were flailing, catching his thighs, his midsection, but he just keeps his feet moving forward, and even though he never found a rhythm in the second half, when his team needed him, he just delivered there in good fashion.
It's still 3.7 yards per carry there for him even after that. He's had 1 1-yard gain, 1 3-yard gain, and everything has been above that.
Exactly, and the 4 touchdowns total, even though they've given the ball quite a bit to Rio Schmidt, they've turned things over to Austin Tripp at times. He is still the guy who puts it in the end zone. 4 touchdowns, I believe that's now 53 on the season for him.
The kickoff from Schmidt. Washington fielded at the 17. He stood up as he crossed the 25 out near the 28-yard line by Elliott Bibb. And yet, for having said all that, Travis, here's Stamford basically down 2 touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions from time to score, and we've seen Hagan Hutchinson and the Bulldogs have that capability throughout the day.
Exactly, which is that amount of points is almost nothing to Stamford for how quickly they can move the ball offensively. Like I said, Mason's first-team defense has only given up 32 points all year. They've given up 26 today, so Stamford clearly has the chops to move the ball out here. I'd be shocked if they huddled once the rest of the game.
From the 28. And it's to the ground on 1st down. Alvarado bounces forward for 4 yards as Stephen Villarreal, a sophomore, brings him down.
I bet you that Mason coach Cade Burns, no coach is ever comfortable with the lead, no matter how much time is left. But he's uncomfortable right now because he knows this situation calls for a lot of passing, a lot of quick play, and that's what Stamford really relies on. That's their bread and butter, is moving the ball quickly and giving it to Hagan Hutchinson.
Second down and 6. And through the seam, it picked off. Stockbridge with the interception. And Chance Stockbridge will finish it.
Chance Stockbridge, his 13th interception of the year. We've talked so little about him defensively today, Craig. All his big plays came on the offensive side of the football. But as his coaches always say, he is the best at knowing where he needs to be that they've ever had. Look, he reads that pass perfectly. He comes in from way over the top of the play and swoops in and plucks that up from Dalton Matthews, who's waiting there for it to get to him. Chance Stockbridge swoops in and grabs it. We talked about his dad used to be a star for Mason. His dad is actually the career interceptions holder for Mason High School, so he started early learning how to be a ball hawk.
45 yards on the return from the senior free safety, Chance Stockbridge. For the conversion, blocked, and short and no good.
Looks like Ty McLemore maybe got in there and knocked that one down.
But Stockbridge with the interception return for the touchdown. And for the second time today, Mason holds a 22-point lead.
Turnovers are going to be the story of this game in the end, Craig.
Right now, it belongs to Mason. The UIL 1A Division I State High School Football Championship is brought to you by State Farm. Visit texas.statefarm.com to score the ultimate VIP experience. By your local Texas Ford dealers. Check out the F-150, the truck of Texas, at texasford.com. By Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. And by DQ, the best tasting treats, eats, and drinks in Texas. DQ just tastes better. Well, Stamford had 2 quick third-quarter touchdowns to rally from down 22 to trailing by 9. Mason has answered with 2 touchdowns in a 51-second span of the fourth quarter here, and they're now back up by 22 as the kickoff is squibbed. Ramos will field it at the 19-yard line. Mason's defense standing him up and driving him back. First man to hit him was Bodie Adams, the senior defensive end downfield.
Now Mason's defense, they actually took a good look at that before the season started when Cade Burns started here. And he said he sat the kids down and explained to them, look, I'm an old school guy. And I know a lot of teams out there are running high-powered spreads. Defense is tough, but to win championships, especially at this level, you still have to play defense. He said they sat down and they looked at the Marts of the 1A world, the Goldthwaits, the Idaloos of the 2A world. Every one of them were better defensively than they were offensively. He said we have to be a good defense to win a championship.
From the 24-yard line for Stamford. Hutchinson will keep it himself on first down and picks up 6. You brought up Goldthwait, Travis. That was the hill that Mason had to climb. They lost twice to their district rivals from Mills County, losing in the regular season, and then the heartbreaker, losing 27-26 in the state quarterfinals last year. And this year it was a mark for them, and when they defeated the Eagles, the state finalists of a year ago, and the 2009 state champions, they knew they were definitely on their way. As Hutchinson under pressure, and the punchers have it. Brought down at the 21-yard line by Corey Zavala and Kyle Zavala.
And that's the only time really today, Craig, the Mason pass rush has been able to get to him. That's because Hutchinson just had to wait so long for somebody because they know they have to pick up yardage in chunks. You talked about Mason beating Goldthwaite this year. They hadn't beaten him in 7 years. And I mean, we know Mason is as an elite a team as they come in 1A, but that's a long dry spell against one team.
And Goldthwaite about as elite as it gets in Class A with what Gary Proffitt's done at that outstanding program. On third down, after that loss of 9, over the middle, caught, and enough for the first down. Dalton Mathis with the catch and out to the 36. So a pickup, 21, and certainly not giving up are the Bulldogs.
Exactly, and I mean, you know, it's easy to look at this game right now in fatalistic overtones and think it's over, but it's not. Stamford can move it too well for it to be over now.
Hutchinson going back to work again. Looking downfield. Now the pressure coming once more for Hagan. manages to shake off a would-be tackler and now has some running room. Hutchinson finally dragged down to the 45-yard line. That was a 9-yard gain where Hagan Hutchinson ran about 40 yards to pick up the 9.
And that's why Nick Navarrete, the linebacker who got the tackle, that's why he's an all-state caliber kid. He had to come all the way across the field, number 29, to finally get a hold of him. He obviously had a little help from Tanner Dutton there over the top, but Navarrete's the one who forced that into a tackle.
Second down and 1 to the ground. And a first down with the ball popped loose. And the punchers may have come up with it again. They have. The third turnover of this second half against Stamford, and Elliott Bibb, the sophomore, comes up with the fumble from Alvarado.
And that's another tough turnover from Stamford. This is not a team that turns the ball over a lot. They're usually too efficient offensively. But when they look back at the film on this, one day, if they ever actually want to sit down and watch it again, they're going to know, darn it, this one slipped away from us because we just turned the ball over. And against a Mason defense like that, you just can't do it. Nick Navarrete was the one who was in there making things happen once again.
Knocked the football loose. And now the punchers have it at the Bulldog 49. Time very much on the side of Mason. To the ground, and Mora picking his way through traffic. Still on his feet. Oh my goodness, what a run by David Mora. Vintage Mora that time. And he takes that one for 21 yards.
You know, his brother Ubaldo says what makes him so dangerous is he keeps his pad level low. Look, he takes so much contact, but his pads are always lower than the defender's pads. They can't bring him down because he's the one delivering the punishment. He's the one that's giving out the hard hit, and it's really difficult for the defense to find a way to wrap up a runaway freight train up the middle like that.
Great run, and you see Mora adding to the total. From the Stamford 29-yard line. It's Mora again. Why not? Mora inside the 25 and down to the 22 for 6 more. Rudy Sanchez the tackle, and Mason doing exactly what he wants to do now, running the clock and moving closer to the goal line.
Eat it up. And we talked a lot about, Mason forcing turnovers today. While it's odd for Stamford to turn it over, it's not for Mason. Like we said in a big win against Shiner a couple weeks ago, a pretty darn good Shiner team. They forced 7 fumbles, and those aren't lost. Those aren't fumbles that Shiner lost. Those were forced. Mason was in there poking balls out and stripping balls. They are just designed to grind away an offense.
Turnovers a big factor today, no question. 3 here in the second half from Stamford. Mora again. Hutchinson trying to ride him to the turf and finally does, but not before David Mora picks up another first down and another 10 yards.
What an interesting moment this also has to be for head coach Cade Burns. Like we said, his dad was the all-time winningest coach in Mason history with over 100 victories, this now being Cade's first year here. And when they were looking for a head coach this offseason, they wanted to find someone who wasn't going to change things, who would keep things more or less the same. He said, I can take that challenge. I can take the product you have, make it better, and honor the memory of my dad.
First down and 10. Ball just outside the 10. Here's Mora. Bouncing outside. And it is all David Mora right now to the 6-yard line. Noah Contreras on the tackle. Mason has never won a state championship, although they've had playoff teams for years. Closing in on winning the school's first.
This is a pretty historic game, Craig, because Mason has qualified for the playoffs 32 times. It's tied for 7th most in 1A. Stamford something very, very similar, 33 all-time. That's 6th most in 1A. So regardless of who comes out with a title here, you got to be impressed.
Stanford is calling a timeout, trying to collect itself defensively, understanding that with half the 4th quarter to go, they have to have a stop here, or it pretty much puts it out of reach if it isn't already now, down 22 points with 6:19 to go.
Well, what Coach Hutchinson's going to tell him now is, look, don't even worry about the clock right now. The only thing you've got to play for now is what's going on inside of you. You make sure you close out this game the way you want to close it out. That's the only way you can come back, is saying you play hard for you.
Well, David Morris had an unforgettable afternoon, and Neil Beasley down on the sidelines with some people who know David pretty well.
He's breaking all your records.
Yes, sir. He's doing everything out there right now. dismantling my records right now.
Now, is that because you taught him everything he knows?
I'd like to say that, sir. Yes, he's a very good kid, and I taught him all that I knew, and it takes a great player to learn and really go out there and execute everything that he's taught.
Now, they talked about it earlier about how David used to be the ball boy and used to just follow around the football team. Was he just want to be like his big brother his whole life? Is that all he wanted to do?
Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. I always hear stories about people just saying, man, your brother just wants to be just like you. You know, he's out there. He's like, man, I can't wait till I have that horseshoe M on my helmet.
Well, maybe it won't be long before David is up here with the face paint, because that's what the Boras are doing. Congratulations and all the success.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, back to you guys.
All right, thank you very much, Neil. Ubaldo feels like he's had an impact on him.
He has. Look at what it's on the field today.
Out of the stack eye. Mora again for the 5th time this afternoon. David Mora reaches the end zone.
And he's just gassed. He's also limping up on an ankle there. You don't want to see a player in his last game this way, but I mean, that's been kind of the Warriors' effort. He's had all day and all season and his entire career has just been a fighter from day one. And even though, as we said, he's limping off the field here now, he told the local media, look, Ubaldo was such a great influence on me, not just as a player. Obviously, I've become a good running back, and he's a big part of that. He influenced who I was as a man. I have grown up into the guy I am now because of the things that Ubaldo did and told me and taught me and all those things. That's a great story of brothers now both setting their stamp on a historic football program.
And an historic afternoon for Mason High School. And David Moore there as he crosses the goal line for the 5th time this afternoon.
Couldn't see where he landed on his ankle at all, but he did take quite a hit. And I think, honestly, he may just be starting to run on fumes a little bit. It's been a long afternoon. They've used him a lot.
Schmidt for the conversion. And Rio's kick makes it a 29-point Mason Puncher lead with just over half of this final quarter to go. What an afternoon, and it's now 55-26.
You know what? Look at this day for him. 41 rushes, 258 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's obviously been everything he was built up to be, but the final score today is really not going to indicate how close this game was. And I think everyone on both sides would say it. You can see Mora's mom there with some other family members kind of celebrating the awesome achievement they've had of, both Ubaldo having such a great career and now David. But looking at this score, this was a closer game than this score will indicate. I think Mason was the better team, but I think Stamford was very much in this game for a long time.
So the extra point makes it a 29-point Mason advantage. And Ubaldo checking on the status of his younger brother. Certainly would be the concern there if he was banged up, but right now Mason is just half of this 4th quarter away from claiming the school's first ever state championship, with that guy being the #1 reason why.
And Ubaldo looks like he could still play. Still looks like he could get out there and run the ball. Looks like, again, they're tending to his ankle. It did plant funny when he took the hit going into the end zone, but it didn't look dramatic. Again, it may be just a situation where he's just so tired. He may just be out of gas entirely, and the ankle's just the straw that broke the camel's back. I think he's earned a rest.
Mason to kick it off. Jesse Ramos back deep to receive it. The Punchers have scored 3 touchdowns in the past 5 minutes and 13 seconds after Stamford had closed within 9. Washington upfield and brought down at about the 35-yard line.
Sounds like an old adage, Craig, and it feels like maybe this would have worn out a long time ago when spread offenses became so popular, but if you run the ball and you play defense, you're going to win a lot of titles. And today, Mason ran the ball very well, but the thing that probably won't be talked about is they did a pretty darn good job against Stamford's run offense, too. They controlled the line of scrimmage from start to finish. A lot of the rushing yardage Stamford had was on maybe 1, 2, 3 plays, and a couple of those were busted. For the most part, Mason really controlled the trenches.
From the 36 of Stamford, Hutchinson quickly to the air and finds Washington across the middle. A first down in Mason territory in the 49. And Mason's defense may be to the point now, Kay Burns saying, we'll give them things across the middle as long as they don't break it for big gainers and make them have to use clock.
It's not exactly prevent, but it's not far from. I mean, you can see the safeties are playing a good 20 yards off the line of scrimmage.
Reagan Hutchinson to throw again for Wimberly, and the pass incomplete off his fingertips.
Looking at this Stamford team, though, we talked about Hagan Hutchinson being a junior, but there's a lot of kids out here who are underclassmen. Ty Blackmore, we've mentioned his name several times today. He's just a sophomore. Austin Alvarado's just a junior. Nick Stanley, the starting center linebacker, just a junior. Looking at Wayne Hutchinson, they still have a very bright future ahead of them. Mason senior late, but Stamford wasn't. 2012 could be exceptional.
James Washington, as you mentioned, a sophomore. Wimberly, a sophomore. I think
Daniel Medina's a junior.
Certainly going to be one of the teams to watch next season. 2nd down and 10. Hutchinson again up the sideline for Ramos and couldn't connect with him that time. It's incomplete.
You know, that's the second time that Ramos seems to have a hard time locating a ball in a deep ball, and I don't think that's his fault. I think all these lights and this big video board, for a kid who's never been out and played in a stadium like this, that's pretty distracting.
You have only to ask Miles Austin of the Dallas Cowboys last week on that crucial 3rd down pass from Tony Romo. He said he lost it in the lights.
Exactly. Keep in mind, I mean, Mason plays in a stadium that seats, what, 6,000 people? This seats 110 in capacity.
On 3rd down. Screen set up with a flag down. Alvarado the catch, but dropped back behind the 50-yard line by Winston Tripp.
It's going to be a hold on the screen, and the reason it's going to be a hold is they had to wait forever to play it because Winston Tripp was hanging around in that general area you want to dump it off to, and he wouldn't let Hagan Hutchinson find the gap there to put that ball into. It is going to be a hold on Stamford.
And obviously the punchers will decline this penalty, bring it up 4th down.
For the most part, they were pretty clean game today, I thought.
Hold on the offense. Penalty decline. 4th down.
And this Dallas-based chapter of officials has done an excellent job. It is 4th down. And Stamford, of course, with little choice. The Bulldogs have to go for it. Hutchinson will hand it to Wimberly, who is trying to throw back to Hutchinson. And Mason sniffed it out in the backfield where the freshman Kyle Zavala made the tackle to downfield where Winston Tripp had the coverage on Hagan Hutchinson, who went out for the pass. Mason execution strikes again.
Exactly, and Bo Wimberly, the guy they tried to get the ball to, he is the backup quarterback, and that is something that he can do, but the defense was all over it. When he turned to look over, there was Zavala charging right in on the play. Zavala read it perfectly. Tanner Dutt was in the area as well. That's just that's a very encapsulating moment for the day, that even if Stamford had a good play call with a guy open, the Mason defense was usually just a step ahead. They were very good today.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they love that.
Well, they played fat with a PHAT today. They've really been an impact. On 1st down, the toss to Schmidt. Schmidt on the move and still moving. And Schmidt will take it to the house. I was about to mention that David Mora wasn't on the field after the shoe had come off and they were attending to the ankle. But Rio Schmidt saw to it that it didn't matter anyway.
You know what? That's Rio Schmidt in a nutshell for you. Every time they've asked him to do something during his career, he's responded. Like we said, at the beginning of 2 days this year, they all of a sudden slapped fullback in front of his name instead of kicker, and he responded. But he's got great feet. He's mobile, and I think part of the reason why, just like, you know, obviously Chance Stockbridge, whose dad was at Mason, Schmidt's dad was at Mason as well. He won back-to-back singles men tennis titles at Mason in '85 and '86.
I was starting to tell you, that's what Mason has been known for athletically for decades, is fantastic tennis. Team tennis, individual tennis. But they're going to be known for being football state champions in December of 2011 as the extra point kick is good. And with just over 5 minutes to go, Rio Schmidt carving his own niche in the state championship game. It's now 62-26. We saw David Moore on the bench. His day is done, and what a day it was with 5 touchdowns. But Rio Schmidt chipping in. And
keep in mind, he also handles all the kickoff duties. He's the kicker. I think he's only missed 2 extra points this year, and both of them came after long scoring runs from him where he was probably winded. They said, you know what, he wasn't near as good as tennis as his dad was. We never even tried to do that. He played soccer early at Midlothian. Maybe that's part of the reason why he's got such good feet. And what a fortuitous move-in from Midlothian back in 7th grade. He's turned out to be a key player in a state title victory.
And David Mora, the key man behind it today for the Mason Punchers. Of course, this is the first game of 3 today. There will be 3 tomorrow and 3 on Saturday. Game 2 coming up this afternoon. The Monday Moguls, the Tennehi Tigers, the 1A Division II state title, and tonight the Melissa Cardinals and Hempstead's Bobcats. Tomorrow, Cisco against the all-time team record holder for points scored in a season in the state of Texas in history, the Refugio Bobcats in the 2A Division II title round. Wimberley and Argyle, which could perhaps wind up being the best game of the whole weekend, the 3A Division II championship at 4. And then Midway High School, the Waco area, they're in Hewitt. They'll take on Lake Travis, going for the all-time record of 5 state championships in a row. And then on Saturday, Aledo and Manville at noon, South Lake Carroll, Fort Bend Hightower, 5A Division I title, and then we'll finish it off Saturday night, Spring Decaney and Cibolo Steel. All of these games seen right here on Fox Sports Southwest. There's a kickoff, and Washington upfield. He'll be run down and out of bounds.
You know what's awesome about small school football, Craig, is obviously Mason's sideline and their fans are all still here and they're going nuts. But looking out in front of us, just below us, not a single Stamford fan has moved. Everyone here is here because they're here for the community. This is a community event. No one would dare leave a game like this early because they're here for the kids. Almost every person in these stands knows every single one of those kids. They see them at the post office. They see them when they go to school. They see them when they go to the grocery store. This is a community event unlike any other.
From the 48-yard line, Hagan Hutchinson will get at least one more series in at quarterback, trying to bring Stamford downfield. He finds Alvarado for the catch, and Austin Alvarado a first down. Down to the 28-yard line. And again, this was a 35-26 ball game. Late third quarter, and Stamford to come fighting back, and then Mason really put their foot on the gas, got some big plays, and a lot of David Moore in the fourth quarter.
Yep, and it was a classic example of turning defense into offense. Every one of Mason's opportunities, every one of Mora's opportunities was started because the defense either forced a stop or they got a big play. They've always kept him in the game.
Came up with turnovers. 3 second-half turnovers. Hutchinson to Alvarado, and Austin Alvarado will take it over.
Something to feel good about, and that's something that Coach Hutchinson talked about with Alvarado. He didn't have a chance to display it today, but as good as he is at running the football, and obviously when everyone keys in on Hagan, it gives Austin room, he can get out of the backfield and catch. And on that play, he had to wait a long time. He ran a long route. Hagan had to wait a long time. You can see it's 11 here who's going to actually run kind of a big wheel route straight down the field. He picks up a catch. That's something that he showed today right here at the end that I think could be a big tool for them going forward, is the ability to go out and catch the football in space.
28 yards on that strike, and the extra point kick by Noah Contreras is good. So Austin Alvarado, the 28-yard catch and run in for the score. Stamford with another touchdown. Like we said, that Mason has now put enough distance between themselves and the Bulldogs to head toward that championship. But credit Wayne Hutchinson Ball Club not giving up, playing it through to the very end. This team that is very, very young in key areas. They'll have a lot of crucial personnel back next year.
Almost every area they're young. And I mean, Craig, I know you and I have both played sports and lost sports before, and the easiest thing to do in this situation is you feel terrible. You hang your head, you feel like you let everyone down, but just to be at this point, playing at this part of the season, means that you did something pretty incredible. There's a lot of teams out there who have never played for a state final, and honestly, there's teams out there that never will. And to be at this opportunity is pretty incredible. The Dave Campbell's Texas football offices, when we talk about who are some of the best programs ever, you know, honestly, we don't judge by state titles, because you can get to a state title game and lose, and that doesn't mean you didn't have a fine year. We judge by regional titles, because if you get that far, you've already proven that you're elite. And I think that Stamford, regardless of what the score shows here, that's a really good football team.
And no question, and mentioned about perennial powers, and in recent years, these have been perennial powers with what Wayne Hutchinson did to build it back up. Mason getting an opportunity in its first ever state championship game, but they've been in the playoff hunt in the past, and that has been one tough district with Goldthwaite in there and winning a state title a couple of years ago. Like you said, that was a tough nut for Mason to crack. They did that, and this afternoon they'll break through and win a state title. Here's the onside kick. It will take a bounce, but is fielded by Rio Schmidt at the 38-yard line, and the Punchers will have it with 4:36 to go.
Yeah, you mentioned, obviously, Wayne Hutchinson building up Stamford. I mean, keep in mind, they won 4 games in 5 years before he got here. And he only got here 6 years ago. So in the span of 6 years, he's turned really a bottom-of-the-barrel program into an elite state title contender. It's right up there with some of the best coaching jobs we've seen in the last 20, 30 years about turning a program around. And you can say what you want about, obviously, the history of the city and everything, but as he said, changing a culture, that's hard. Finding a way to get kids to believe and buy into themselves, that they can go out and be winners. I think he's done that, and obviously Russell Joy and Cade Burns at Mason have done the same thing.
I asked Wayne Hutchinson about what we refer to as the old-timer quotient, about the guys who were part of those state championship runs in the 50s. He said, yeah, heard it from a lot of them. And on first down, Schmidt on the carry. But in years from now, folks will be able to look back and talk about Mason, guys like Rio Schmidt and Austin Tripp, and of course, David Moore, the groundwork they laid for the Punchers' first ever state football title.
Right, Hutchinson said, even in the lean years when he was first starting, every game they went to, their fans always outnumbered the opposition's fans. And for bad teams and small communities, that's not always easy to go out there and do. A lot of times you got other stuff you got to worry about doing to go out and catch a football game, but their fan support has been unwavering. And for that matter, looking at the Mason fans, they're here in force. Both sides' fans outnumber their city's population
easily. That's also a testament to this sport in this state as the carry takes it in and the ball popped loose, and that's a turnover. Stamford to come away. Bo Wimberly comes up with a fumble recovery, so Stamford will have it back with 3:40 to go in the football game.
Someone's down for Mason. Looks like number 22.
And that's going to be...
That looks like Rawls Sodero, backup running back there. We haven't seen much of him today. Everyone taking a knee now. We saw him moving, so it doesn't look to be anything of that ilk, but he is hurt somewhere.
Might have come down on the football after it popped loose, and that can knock the wind out of you if that is indeed the case.
Still just a sophomore, too. I mean, he hasn't been able to see a lot of action this year.
As we pointed out, a huge crowd on hand when you consider the relative small size of these schools. 197 students at Mason, 180, officially 180.5 at Stamford, and you see the big crowd on hand. And I've always said that is a testament to this game in this state, in the state of Texas. High school football, you get to 2 very small towns and have thousands of fans show up because they come from the region, they come from the area, and there's folks that are on the Mason side that may have been out in Wall or up in San Angelo or in Llano or down in Fredericksburg, that have come from the area, the whole Hill Country Regional and the Concho Valley even coming out. And for Stamford, out of the Big Country region, around Abilene and north up toward Wichita Falls and out east and west, they've come from a long ways to see this game, and they've come in large numbers this afternoon. And right now the attention for Raul Seguero as they attend to him. We'll take a break here. 3:40 to go in the Class 1A Division I State Football Championship, and Mason leading 62-33. Good news there. Raul Seguero up and walking off the field. A little bit of assistance, but still managing to walk off the field after losing the football and maybe his wind as well as he came down on a hard pop. And Stamford takes over with 3:40 to go. And Bulldogs, even if they lose this game, want to make it closer. And on first down to the air, as Hutchinson was looking for Bo Wimberly.
You were saying earlier, Craig, about how the size of the cities and being out here in such force. It's also important to note that, neither of these cities are right next door to Arlington either. Mason's pretty much dead center of Texas. That's not a short drive. And, Stamford's not very close either. And let's be frank, times are tough. It's hard for people to get out there and may pay all the money to get hotels and drive all this way and be a part of here. But these fans are willing to do it for these kids.
So the hotel this morning where there were a lot of Mason fans in one hotel here in Arlington. And look at the escape job by Hutchinson. Pumping, now going downfield for Ramos and finds him. And Ramos turning it outside. Oh, what an artistic play this is going to be. And what a great run after the catch by Jesse Ramos. All the way down to the 6-yard line. That is a great run after the catch. There was a punishing block on the play, and it goes for 47 yards.
Yeah, where do you start to praise someone there? Obviously, you have to start with Hagan, who bought time, rolled out of the pocket, did a good job of directing his wide receiver Ramos on telling him where to go. You'll see him pump the ball right there, show him where he wants Ramos to go, and then coming on from the other side of your screen, you're going to see Bo Wimberly just jar somebody down to the ground, and Ramos find a way to get down close to the end zone.
Now Hutchinson looking for a target in the end zone and finding James Washington for the score. So Washington in for the score as Stanford bounces back with a couple of late touchdowns here.
I like it. I like the fight. It would have been so easy for them to just go ahead and put the helmets down proverbially and say, you know what, this one's pretty much done. Let's just run the ball and go home and regroup a little bit. But they came out fighting for all their worth. And this is still, even if this extra or 2-point conversion or extra point is good, it's still going to be roughly a 20-point deficit for 3 minutes. That's a lot, but they never gave up.
For the conversion is Noah Contreras out of the hold of Dalton Mathis. Big block there from Wimberly on the touchdown. The extra point kick is good. It's a 62-40 ball, and we've had 102 points scored in this state championship game. No, this is 11-man. It's not a 6-man title game, but it is Class A.
Well, if we thought this one was going to be the moderate to low-scoring game, and the next one was going to be high-scoring between Tenaha and Monday, goodness gracious, it's going to be 200 points between the two of them.
Randy McElvoy and Shea Walker maybe a little bit winded by the end of that one. James Washington, touchdown.
Now on that big block, that was Bo Wimberly. We haven't talked about him much today, Craig, but he's a jack of all trades for Stanford. He's the wide receiver, he's a backup quarterback, a backup free safety, a special teams kid, and most importantly, he's just a sophomore. He's 5'9", 147 as a sophomore. He's got a really bright future, and maybe when Hagan's done starting the 2013 season, maybe Bo is the guy who comes in and plays quarterback in this, difficult to comprehend offensive system where you have to read a bunch, and once you get the hang of it, I think it's actually pretty simple, but getting there is tough. Bo's going to have 2 years to learn from Hagan, who will go down as one of the best quarterbacks in program history.
Wayne Hutchinson was just talking to his team again about trying to see if they can execute this onside kick. They come close a couple of times, but a fair catch negated one, and the second was recovered on a nice play by Duarte to move up to field it. So now Washington will try it again. 62-40.
You're right. They've been close. They had one that it went about 11 yards. If it had gone 10, they would have had it. I mean, they've been in position. They've got it close. Just got to execute it.
Rush up to the football and then back into position.
Play clock's going on them. Got to go.
And there it is. Does take the high bounce, and Mason does a good job of covering it yet again. It was Rio Schmidt who came in to field one earlier and comes up with that recovery.
He's just the do-it-all guy for him. Anytime they need someone to fill a gap, it's Rio Schmidt. Anytime they need someone to spell David Mora, it's Rio Schmidt. Anytime they need someone to go out there and kick the ball or punt it, it's Rio Schmidt. I mean, Mora's obviously going to be the star for great reasons. Austin Tripp's always going to get a lot of attention because he's the quarterback. The leader of the defense is the leader of the defense, but Rio Schmidt fills so many different roles for this team. If you take him off this roster, I'm not sure Mason's here.
You look at the other contributors, Chance Stockbridge, Winston Tripp, they've all contributed. Jake Newsom on the receiving end of that option trick play at the end of the first half of the touchdown. It has been truly the team game, even with the individual star being Mora, as Schmidt carries it up to the midfield stripe, and Mason certainly intent on running out the clock. Stanford will use a timeout here.
Timeout. Defense.
There's David Moore right there. His day is done, but what a day it was for Mora.
He's going to remember this for a long time, for a lot of reasons. Obviously, the stats and the touchdowns, I guarantee you in 2 years he won't know how much he ran for, but he'll remember winning the title. He'll remember playing in this stadium in front of these fans. And we mentioned that in the open, Craig, about how special it was for these kids to be out here at the stadium playing here. And when the UIL first announced its decision to go United site for all games, they wanted to play all 11-man games here at Cowboy Stadium, it was met with some opposition because people thought, well, the travel's a long way, or, for a number of different reasons. But if you go out there and you talk to coaches, and you talk to kids, there's not a single one of these kids that didn't want to play here for obvious reasons. Look around you. I mean, it's an incredible facility. It's arguably the elite sports facility in the world. And for a 1A kid, a lot of these guys have never been out of town. If you don't believe me, ask the coaches. They'll tell you some of these kids have never left Mason. They've never left Stamford. And all of a sudden, to find themselves looking up at this, where Tony Romo walks out and the Cotton Bowl is played, overwhelming.
It used to be, as you look at the football right in the center of the field at the Big Blue Star, that for years, what many teams desired was to play on the Big Blue Star at Texas Stadium. And Bruce Hardy and his staff did a fabulous job all through the years, originally pioneered by Bert Rose in the early 1970s. And then Bruce Hardy and his group just took it to another level. And now this stadium takes spectator sports to an entirely different level as the toss goes outside and a first down. A nice run for the first down by Schmidt. And now Mason intent to try to run out the clock here, leading 62-40. The Zavala boys have been in on it, or as the sign says, the Zavala Fat Boys. Been a part of it today, a big part of it.
Just one timeout left for Stamford, too. So at a 1st and 10, they're probably going to be able to stop the clock once. So even if they did force a 4th down turnover now, there would be very little time left. But it's still worth fighting for.
Austin Tripp. A handoff to Schmidt. One more time, Rio Schmidt. And then loses the football. And it'll be picked up by Stamford. And upfield is Ramos. Picking up that loose football, and he's still on his feet. Here's Ramos. Still weaving his way through traffic. Jesse Ramos finally brought down. And he has to be a little bit winded after that fumble return. That was very exciting. And Stamford will get it one more time with 2 minutes to go in the football game.
Well, Craig, I've seen some crazy things. And I know you've seen some crazier things. You may have seen more crazy things than anyone. But this would be crazy. If they can score here, it would be a 2-possession game, and then you're scoring an onside kick away from having a shot. There's a lot of things that are unlikely, but there's not a lot that's impossible in high school football. This would be something. We're working our way towards it.
The big hit to knock the football out by Bo Wimberly.
There he is again.
And then Ramos, quite the artistic return. And so Stamford with another opportunity here with 2 minutes to go. If you're rooting for Mason, you must be thinking that this 4th quarter has been endless, at least the back half of it. Hutchinson thought he had some running room, but dragged down by Stephen Villarreal, the sophomore.
Haven't heard
Timeout.
anything today.
Offense. That was their 3rd timeout.
Stamford calling its final timeout with 1:53 remaining.
And calling that timeout, they're pretty much in the situation anyway, but calling that timeout means essentially that they're going to have to recover onside kicks the rest of the way. If they don't get one, that's obviously going to put them pretty much behind the 8 ball, but never say never with this group. They seem determined not to quit. And like I said before, that's impressive, because when you're 17 and 18 and you're getting beat pretty badly like they were earlier in the game, it's so easy to roll over. It's so comforting to do that, but it's harder to fight, and that's what they've done.
This is game number 1 of 3 state championship games this afternoon and tonight on Fox Sports Southwest. This afternoon, coming up, the second game will be the 1A Division II state championship. Tenaha against Monday. That's coming up approximately 4 o'clock, depending on the remaining time here, and then suitable warm-up time for both the Monday Moguls and the Tenaha Tigers. And then tonight, the 2A Division I title on the line. Hempstead's Bobcats against the Melissa Cardinals. Melissa, quite a story this season.
No one thought they were going to be there. I mean, I'll admit it. First of all, I knew they were a good program. The Cardinals are excellent offensively, a good quarterback in Wes McQueen. I did not see a title game for them. They proved me wrong.
And a very young program overall. The varsity level, you saw the total yardage. We're nearing 1,000 yards of total offense. Some of that will be given back on this quarterback sack as Zavala and Villarreal team up to drop Hagan Hutchinson for a loss of 8.
Villarreal's second tackle behind the line of scrimmage, and what Mason's doing now, they've decided, all right, we're going to drop some guys back deep. You can see how far back the defensive backs were. And we're just going to keep Hutchinson in the pocket. He can't hurt us nearly as bad as there as if he is running around.
3rd down for Hagan Hutchinson and the Stamford Bulldogs. The air again. And this time Ramos loses the football. It's incomplete, and it'll bring up 4th down and one final offensive play for Stamford, unless they can at least convert a first down, as we're down to 1:06 remaining.
Under a minute now. Clock's still running. I don't think it should be running, though. Should have stopped it.
4th down. And Hutchinson getting his teammates set.
Both sides look confused, running people on and off, and coaches walking around.
And Hagan Hutchinson looking for one more play. Upfield, had a long way to go and stopped short of the first down, and that'll do it as Villarreal brings him down to the 45-yard line, and now Mason can get ready to celebrate it. David Moore and Cade Burns, the rest of the punchers, know that the title is theirs.
Putting some backups in now, get them a chance to say they played in this stadium. Give them a little bit of experience for next year, obviously, playing in front of this many people and this high stakes of a game, and more importantly, just give them a story once upon a time. If it never works out for them again, they can say, I stood on the field at Cowboy Stadium and took a snap.
It'll be Cade Burns' first state championship as a coach, and obviously it'll be Mason High School's first state football championship.
And of course, their first undefeated season.
Be a perfect 15-0.
Cade Burns' first year state title. How about that?
One more snap for Austin Tripp and the punchers. The town that calls itself the gem of the Hill Country has a gem for its trophy case. A first ever state football championship for the Mason Punchers, who claim the Class 1A Division I state football championship.
David Moore, befittingly, you can see the emotion on his face. It's more than just a hurt ankle. It's more than just one win. I mean, for him, this is a lifetime achievement. For being with his brother so long at an early age and dreaming of this moment, when you finally get there, it's so overwhelming for him at this moment right now.
5 touchdowns, over 200 rushing yards, and there's David's older brother, Ubaldo, who was a big part of Mason's success in the past, but David is a part of the most successful Mason High School football team in its history. A perfect 15-0 season and a state title. Same thing for Cade Burns, as you mentioned, a remarkable job in his first year to coach this team to a state title.
And only his 3rd year as a head coach ever, Craig. He was a head coach for 2 years at Thorndale and had great success. They were very good offensively. And then he came to Mason in his 3rd season. He's playing for a state title. Think about some of the legends of the game who have coached and have never been able to get to this point. I think Jim Streety at San Antonio Madison, a 300-game winner, has never won a state championship. Now Cade Burns has one in his 3rd year. I think he has a chance to be a name we'll remember for a long time here in the small school ranks.
I think the same holds for David Moore, a legendary performance this afternoon.
Well, he'll finish in the top 15 in career rushing yards in state history, and even though that won't show up in a lot of the record books in the back because we only show top 5 or top 6, knowing that he did that with all the kids who have run the ball in the great state of Texas is pretty unbelievable.
And what's always a great moment of sportsmanship is the two teams gathered together for their moment of reflection together after the game. And a true mark of sportsmanship on both sides. And that's why the applause is coming from both the Stamford and the Mason sides in appreciation of what these two football teams did. The show they put on today with nearly 1,000 yards combined of total offense.
They left it all out there. You know, Craig, throughout the entire course of this game, as physical and as intense as football is, I didn't see one single dirty play. I didn't see a dirty hit. I didn't see a late hit. I didn't see a face mask. There was a couple heavy blocks in there, but that is just part of the game. That's what you live with. Both of these teams, I think, had a lot of mutual respect. And I think it's because they know they each played hard. The coaches are both great guys. When we got to sit and talk to them, awesome guys. And both of their teams reflected what kind of character their coaches have out there today.
The celebration You saw the embrace there for David Moore from head coach Cade Burns. And the presentation of the state championship trophy from the University Interscholastic League. Dr. Charles Brynup, the executive director of the UIL, is out on the field, as well as the athletic director, Dr. Mark Cousins, and the UIL staff on the field as the presentation of the championship trophy awaits the Mason Punchers. And they get a chance to celebrate it with their fans who made that drive coming up US 87 or across on Texas Highway 29 and eventually up the highways and byways to Arlington in the state title.
You know what? It's a pretty incredible moment, because I guarantee you if you were walking down the streets of Mason, Texas right now, you'd be celebrating by yourself because everyone's here. I mean, everyone from the entire community came out to this game, and this is a great time to give a shout out to Mason's radio play-by-play guy, Lee Graham, who was the play-by-play voice of Mason for 42 years. He's missed 5 games since 1964. He's been doing their record keeping, everything about that school. He's been a principal. He's been a key part of this program, and he's never going to get talked about. He won't show up in the box score here today, but he's been a big part of that program, and everyone said they wanted to win one for him.
Hey, got to have a tip of the hat to those radio guys.
Oh, bias.
And work very, very hard, and that's great for him and great for the program, and what a great moment, not only for David Mora, and also celebrating there with Brody Taylor, we told you about, his own personal challenges and everything that he's done in his life. But what a great story this is. And it's a great story at Stamford as well, with everything they've had to overcome this year and losing 2 games in district play and having to fight back through to make the playoffs, losing to the Monday Moguls, who are getting ready to take the field to play Tenaha for the 1A Division II state title. That happened in the season opener, and what Wayne Hutchinson did to turn this program around and make people at Stamford proud of that tradition that they've had for so many years again.
You know, he told us, he said, I'll be honest, you know, Stamford's not blessed with a lot of resources. They don't have a high socioeconomic status. Life isn't always easy for them, but they've always been a part of this program. They've always supported them, and creating an attitude, a belief of success for Stamford was never going to be easy. And, you know, we looked a little bit at Brody Taylor there for Mason, and obviously his incredible story playing center with one arm. I mean, a lot of other levels of football, Craig, it's not that he couldn't play, he just never would have been given a chance. I mean, he wouldn't even have made it because of the differences inherent in the sport between 1A and 5A. But here, anybody can play, anybody can be a star, and in some ways, everybody is.
It's a moment no student athlete will ever forget, being draped with a state championship medal. And there's Brody Taylor's moment, and here's David Mora's moment. You hear the roar go up for David as the state championship medals are presented. It's always a fabulous moment for that, and the families of these student athletes get a chance to share in the moment that their young men will remember for the rest of their lives. Andy Duarte receiving his medal there. And down the line is the Mason Punchers will bring a state title home to the Hill Country for the first time on the football field.
You know, David Mora in our magazine, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, said, you know, I haven't really been contacted by colleges. I'd like to play somewhere. I think that would be fun, but if I don't, it's not the end of the world. I think somewhere, if some coach wanted to, there would be a home for him on a roster. You know, is he going to go out and play at LSU? I don't know, probably not. Most kids don't get the chance from 1A football to do that, but he showed today with his talent, and I think in a lot of ways his heart, how many hits he took and how much he kept chugging along, that there is a home for him somewhere on some football team. And any 1A coach will tell you, even in 6-man too, even though we don't have the most amount of kids on the roster, you will never find a more complete football player than from Class 1A.
Representatives for both teams will be presented with their trophies. The state runner-up trophy for the Stamford Bulldogs. And for the UIL Class A Division I State Football Championship trophy, the Mason Punchers will receive it, as Dr. Charles Brynup, the executive director of the University Interscholastic League, awaits
You know, we've talked so much about the head coaches today. Assistant coaches at this level get a hearty handshake too, because sometimes these guys are doing it for volunteer work. I mean, they're doing it for free just because they want to go out there and help these kids grow and accomplish something. Both assistant coach staffs here today were great. You saw a lot of good adjustments in the second half, and head coaches can't do that alone. If either Coach Burns or Coach Hutchinson for Stamford up here, they would shake us if we didn't end up recognizing their assistants too. Everyone did a great job on those staffs.
And Chance Stockbridge receiving a plaque as well for the defensive player of the game. Stockbridge with a big moment, and I think we all know who the offensive most valuable player is
of this
Class A state championship.
He's getting quite a cheer, and he deserves it.
The MVP on offense for this Class A Division I state football championship, David Mora. Unforgettable moment there as he is with Dr. Charles Brynup, the executive director of the UIL.
What percentage of his body weight is his hair? It's got to be at least 10%, right?
Now the presentation of the team trophies. First, the runner-up trophy for Class A Division I. Coach Wayne Hutchison and the Stamford Bulldogs being presented with the UIL Division I Class A state runner-up trophy. And while it may be disappointing, we know that Wayne Hutchison knows he's got the makings of a championship ball club next year.
He definitely does. With all the underclassmen, it starts with his son, Hagan, a junior, and then we can also talk about guys like Bo Wimberly, a sophomore, and all the guys they have on the defensive side of the ball, like Medina, their weak side linebacker, still just a junior. A lot of young kids out there, and in some ways, Craig, this game will be one of the best things to ever happen to them, because now they know every step of the way what's needed to win.
And Mason has discovered that this afternoon. Time for the presentation of the 1A Division I UIL State Football Championship Trophy to head coach Kate Burns.
What a moment. You got to live in it, because you know you may not get another one.
Everybody gets an opportunity to touch that very unique championship trophy that's presented by the UIL to all of its state football champions. Last week, of course, the 3A Division I championship trophy going to Chapel Hill High School just outside of Tyler. And that was won here 20-19 in the 3A Division I title round over Alvarado, and the two six-man state football championship trophies presented out in Abilene, and now the first of 9 to be presented this weekend here at Cowboy Stadium, the first of 3 to be presented today. And the Purple Pride, the Puncher Pride of Mason, getting an opportunity to represent.
You know, looking at this moment, you said we're obviously going to crown 9 champions this weekend. I mean, put yourselves, if you can, real quick in the shoes of these kids hoisting a trophy from Mason. This is everything a lot of these kids have ever worked for. So in some ways, this is going to be one of the best memories they'll ever have in their lives. We get to watch it on TV. We're going to see it 9 times. I mean, in some ways, this will be some of the best things that ever happened to these kids. And everyone in the state of Texas gets to see it happen 9 times this weekend. It's a rare thing what Texas high school football means in these parts, where everyone, including the UIL and Fox and coaches and players, everyone makes a commitment to make this moment available to everyone, because this is maybe the last true community sport where everyone can be a part of it at all times.
And Mason can always say, we were the first to lead off the parade on a weekend that'll happen. Well, the state championship belongs to Mason, and let's go down to the field among the punchers, our own Neil Beasley.
All right, we've got coach and player here, more over here, and coach over here, Kate Burns. First year, that's a pretty high level you set for yourself.
Oh, well, we have a lot of good kids, that love playing, and great kids, high character, and I could be more proud of them for what they've accomplished this year. It's really a tribute to their flexibility and some of the things that we kind of changed up a little bit, but you know, these kids have worked hard all year, and they deserve everything they got.
Great coaching, though, running in the family, is it?
Oh, well, I got a pretty good coach in my dad, and I know he's up there looking over us right now, and he's pretty happy. He's real happy, I know.
And I know the last thing Stamford wanted to see was 13 just running up and down the field, but he sure had a heck of a day today with that offensive line.
Yeah, David's a great football player. We did a good job up front of blocking him, and they knew we were going to run the ball, and it was just something that we wanted to do and be able to do, and you know, we felt like the team that could run the ball was going to win. And you know, our kids did a great job up front of picking up the different fronts they've had, and of course David's David. David's a heck of a football player. I'm going to be real sad in May when that one walks the stage.
Coach, congratulations. All right, come here. He's got a Gibby ankle, but I'm guessing you're glad it happened when it did in that first play of the first game. What a great game. Did you dream about this since you were a kid?
Oh, yes, sir. We've always dreamed about it. All of us seniors, we had always talked about it when we were little. We dreamed about it and came out here today. We got the opportunity to be here at the state championship, and we just wanted to take advantage of it, and we did, and it's awesome.
When did you realize that your offensive line in the running game was really turning it on and you were going to have a big day?
The first series, I felt it from the get-go. You know, they were mashing people up front, and the holes were big, and it was awesome. It's awesome. It's a pleasure to run behind these guys. I love them.
Quite a ride from ball boy to state champ. How is it?
It's been a long ride. It's been awesome. Like I said earlier, I've always dreamed about it. I grew up, you know, watching my brother play football, being the ball boy around the big atmosphere and stuff like that, and it's just awesome to come out here and get a state championship. That's so weird to say, but yeah.
And the offensive MVP. Congratulations.
Sir, thank you very much.
All right, Craig, let's throw it back up to you guys. We got one down. Plenty more to go.
All right, you bet. Thank you very much, Neil. Yes, it's just the first one done. Coming up next, our non-stop UIL state championship coverage continues on 4 Championship Live with Rick Renner and Randy Rogers. And that'll be followed by the Class A Division II state championship between the Mundy Moguls and the Tennehi Tigers at 4 o'clock. For Travis Stewart and Neil Beasley, I'm Craig Way. Once again, the final score, the Mason Punchers, the Class A Division I state football champions, they defeat Stamford 6